check us out at https:/womensweb.in, and we're present in English, Hindi, and Tamil. So no matter your language of choice, we are the platform for you to come and share your own experiences and stories. Very quickly, I'm just going to set a little bit of a context to who we are, what we do, and where does the orange flower fit into the context of all that. So, as most of you know, Women's Web is really a platform that enables women and people of all genders to tell their own stories, to share their own experiences. We really believe that every person's voice has the power to, be there for every other person. So many times, we have people who've read a story that they've seen on Women's Web and they say, oh my God, that's like my story out there. Or they say that this is a experience or story that I found strength with. It's a strength from, it spoke to something in me. It really reflected where I am today and where I want to be. So, given that that's what we do, we thought that often the journey of creating can be a very lonely journey. You feel like you're doing it all alone. Creative spaces can be very lonely spaces for a lot of people, whether you're a writer, blogger, Instagrammer, whether you're creating YouTube content. Many of us often are creating either by ourselves or in very, very small teams, and it can feel like a very long journey to get to where you want to be. Which is why really the power of the community becomes so much more important, to have this community where we are there for each other, where we are celebrating each other, and we're really cheering each other on, and also, of course, being there with us through the difficult times, whether that means some situation where, let's say, you're getting trolled on social media, which does happen, or a situation where you really feel like you're not being recognized and you're hesitant about where is all this going. So as creators, we really need to be there for each other and support each other in whatever way we can. And we thought the orange flower really came out of that, because we wanted to recognize the voices of people putting themselves out there in whatever spaces they may be in, whether that's as a photo blogger, whether that's a writer, writing in the space of social change, whether that's somebody creating a podcast. I mean, that's a new category that we've introduced this year as part of the Orange Flower Awards. No matter what space you create in, we thought we need a space to celebrate all of you. And of course, those of us who may not necessarily be very active creators, but who also applaud these creators as readers, as viewers, because obviously without our readers and viewers, there's no value to what we're doing. The idea is that we are there with all of you. So the whole idea behind the Orange Flower Festival and Awards is to recognize the many, many vibrant voices, not just on Women's Web, but across digital platforms, especially by women and non-binary creators. This is really the space to recognize that. So the awards also emerged out of that. And while obviously in the 19 categories that we have, we cannot, have everybody receiving an award. The awards, as well as the finalist listings, go to, a certain number out of those. We've always been very clear right from the start that every single person who's nominated themselves, that itself, is a win for them, because standing up to be counted really means something. So that's the whole, ethos with which the Orange Flower Awards and festivals work. And I really hope you have a very interesting evening today. Besides the awardees who would be announced, we have many engaging sessions for you, all around creativity, all around sharing our voices. So I hope all of you really enjoy it. And I'd like to just quickly mention that our hashtags are Orange Flower or Orange Flower 2021. So if you are sharing on any social channel, do tag us at Women's Web, do tag other creators, and please do share your thoughts. And on the YouTube live that we have going on right now, where you're watching us, we also have a comment section. We'd love it if you shared a whole lot of love for the community as a whole, if you shared inspiring, encouraging messages for other creators and what you've gained from this whole experience. We'd love to hear more from you, and maybe even on what else you'd like going forward. I'd just like to, end this. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time. I just like to end with a little quote, which, I came across in this book I read last year called Manifesto for a Moral Revolution. It's written by Jacqueline Novogratz, who's an impact investor. And she's, of course, talking in the context of social change. And this is one of the very powerful things she says, that our actions and inaction touch people we may never know and never meet across the globe. I thought it captured so aptly so much of the work that we do in digital spaces, because it can feel like we're just putting things out into a void there, and you have no idea sometimes who's reading it, who's engaging with it. But nevertheless, there is an impact, and I think I would love for all of us to believe that we are here to make that impact, even though sometimes it may take time to understand how that's playing out. With that, I will go back to giving it over to Jo, aka Jyotishri Mohanty. I'll just very quickly introduce Jo. Jo is our digital marketing manager at Women's Web. She is going to be our MC for today. Jo is a very, very enterprising social media manager who's herself a return to work mom, who's now in her second career innings and smashing it out here. So over to you, Jo.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction and setting the context. And yeah, that was a very powerful quote to start this evening. So let's quickly move on to the first session. The first session is with Dr. Indira Chandrasekhar, and the session is on how your voice holds the power to embolden the voice of the community. So a quick introduction of Dr. Indira Chandrasekhar. She's a scientist, a fiction writer, a literary curator, and the founder and principal editor of Out of Print, one of the primary platforms for short fiction based out of India. She curates literature at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival in Mumbai and is associated with a number of other more select literature gatherings in the country. So Dr. Chandrasekhar, welcome to the Orange Flower Festival 2021. The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you very much, everyone who's listening in, for being here. Good evening. How very humbling to be addressing a group of empowered women, women who carve out their niches, create their empires, manage complex households, and carry cultural heritage forward to the next generation. I'm not sure about all of you, but even though we are not in the same room and are only connected by the invisible electronic threads of technology, as Aparna said, are we connected? I feel the energy generated by this event, and I think the excitement is generated from a sense that despite the many hurdles we might face, we can move things and make things happen. And platforms like Women's Web that facilitate the creation of these collective, resonating voices, they are critical in this journey, and I thank them. I thank them for inviting me to give the keynote at the Orange Flower Awards Festival, and I'm grateful to be here. So who am I? One could say I wear multiple hats. I'm a writer and a storyteller, a transcriber of stories. So my imagination as I speak to you today at the Orange Flower Festival leaps into wondering, why orange flower? You note that I've acquired some for this evening myself from my mother's garden. So what was the flower that inspired the name? Was it just a little flower, but a meaningful one, a showy, spectacular one, a single flower, a riot of color, a pattern on a sari, a symbol? In my first conversation with Ruchi about the festival, I was tempted to ask, but then literature always brings this sort of intriguing fascination. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I want to know straight away what the orange flower is all about. So I just want to explore these possibilities in my mind, but maybe by the end of this event, I will seek closure and try to find out. I'm also a scientist. I don't practice now. But when I was an active scientist, at the stage that I was a young mother, I was often at my desk with my little daughter in hand, in arms. She was a dreadfully fussy eater. And at the very moment that I was trying to analyze my data and figure out what my biomembranes were doing, at that same moment, I was trying to feed my daughter at my desk at my lab. So basically, it tells me we are multitaskers, we, the human race, that is. And they say that women are even better multitaskers than men, that we can switch between different neural pathways much faster than men can. I don't know if that's true, but in any case, as a multitasker and as an editor and a gatherer and refiner of stories, even as I wonder about the origin of the orange flower, I'm thinking about all of you listening today. And my mind thrills with the thought of the many stories that you will generate. Stories of courage and conviction, of privilege valued and maximized, of hardship vanquished, of the funky twists that led to you to where you are, humor, ridiculousness, all of those wonderful things, and of the multiple motivations that you have for doing what you do. But why do I care about these stories? Why do any of us care? Because stories build and sustain communities, and that is their power and their enduring strength. Perhaps one could even go as far as to say they guide and direct communities. So let's just keep that thought in mind and hold it. And in the meantime, I shall try to explain what I mean by the connection between story and community. And instead of a wordy highbrow explanation, I'm going to read you small excerpts from two stories. One from Out of Print, the 10-year anthology, of which I'm very proud. I don't know if you could see it. It just came out at the end of last year, and it celebrates 10 years of my online magazine, Out of Print. And it was brought out by the publishing house Context. And the second excerpt is from the magazine itself, from Out of Print. So the first excerpt is from a contemporary revisiting of the story of Ambika and Ambalika from the Mahabharata. So for those of you who don't remember the details, the kingdom needs an heir. So the widowed young virgin queens are forced to bed with the much older stepbrother of their dead boy king husband. They're forced to bed with the rishi Vyasa, who has just returned in a wild and unwashed state from penance in the forest. So Ambika closes her eyes in fear, and the blind king Dhritarashtra is conceived. And Ambalika turns pale, and the pale Pandu, whose father, or rather husband of the mothers of the Pandavas, is conceived. The modern retelling is by the extraordinary Sashi Deshpande, and it's called The Three Princesses of Kashi, and it opens this anthology that I just published. Sorry, let me turn to the right page. It's the next page, really. It opens this anthology that I just published. The narrator is Ambika, and there's some very powerful and upsetting writing describing the union of Ambika and Vyasa, but I shall skip ahead. Vyasa has just finished and left the room, and I shall begin to read. Ambalika, I should warn her, but of what use was it? She would have to go through it as I had done. We had no choice. We had never had a choice since the day Bhishma brought us here. I walked restlessly in my room thinking of our childhood and how Ambalika and I had longed to grow up and become beautiful princesses. We had thought of marriage, of a husband, but children had never entered our story. Now I was learning, Ambalika would learn too, that children are the biggest part of every story. We had dreamt of love, of being loved, but the man had been like a beast which has not eaten for a long time. Uncaring of my pain, thinking only of my female body, doing what his mother had told him to do to impregnate me. Did he find any pleasure in it? Who knows? A wise man, a learned man, the maid had called him. Ambalika was subdued when we met. Did she know? Had he gone to her? But she said nothing, and I was silent too. And then there came a day when I knew the man had visited her. She didn't have to tell me. What had happened to her was implicit on her face. Perhaps she too knew the shame I had experienced. We buried the man and what he had done to us in silence. How I wish we were all in the room together and this were an interactive session and I could ask each of you what your responses are to this reading. Instead, I have to tell you the many things I am interpreting from this excerpt. And basically, fundamentally, by publishing and valuing this story, I'm declaring that this is a story that needs to be retold from this point of view, that this is an issue that must be examined so that it can trigger in us questions to examine the injustice, the powerlessness, the silence, and the implicit justification of it all by the creators and recounters of the story. Of course, we must remember that these are texts that were written thousands of years ago and transmitted orally from even before that. So they were texts that began to build settled communities, structured communities from wandering nomadic peoples. So it's not our purpose to devalue these texts. What I think is important, critically important, is to interpret them, yes, from our context today and from our collective power today, and not accept powerlessness and imposed societal structures and oppressions. So here is where I make my first venture into directly addressing the statement posed in the title that Ruchi proposed to me, or that Women's Web proposed to me, how your voice holds the power to embolden the voice of the community. One of the significant things that has occurred for the women's voice in recent times has been the Me Too movement. Despite all its fallacies and errors and wrong directions that one might criticize, the fact that in this century, a woman's voice raised in direct sexual oppression is heard and not immediately dismissed, at least some of the time, that is huge. So let's come back to that. Before addressing that issue, I'd like to enter the second excerpt, but I was really hard-pressed to choose just two. There are so many powerful pieces in out of print. In March 2015, soon after the terrible brutalization in Delhi, we brought out an issue on sexual and gender violence. The stories in it are subtle and strong and so excellently crafted. In fact, that issue won a Ladli Media Award for that year, and I'm grateful. But then I thought in this lecture, I should move to another theme altogether, one that is thrust into the forefront of our thoughts in today's climate, that of plurality. I would like to read an excerpt from a story by Meera Kashyap called Supplication. It's an intensely personal story. A young woman is at the cusp of something that is the cause of great anxiety, and she has a dream that she shares with her husband Rohit, who encourages her to pursue where it leads her. And where it leads her is to the Dargah of Mai Sahiba, whom the character knows nothing about, and who she discovers is the mother of the Sufi saint Nizamuddin Auliya. She goes to the Dargah, and there are fine descriptions of her first encounters with the space, its surroundings, and her lack of familiarity. So I'll just read the excerpt now. Eventually, she's reached the prayer room of Mai Sahiba, and this is the excerpt. Inside the prayer room, the light comes from two low openings, one from the shrine and the other from a shaft. I sink to the ground facing the shrine. A thick woolen carpet covers the ground. It is instantly comforting. I slump forward and find myself kneeling. There is nothing here, no pictures, No flowers, no incense, no fragrance, just the view of a silver pillar in the shrine and an unswept shaft. I breathe deeply and wait for my anxiety to settle. In this 800-year-old dark cell, emotions well up in waves. She had prayed here constantly. She could communicate directly. My Sahiba, I am so scared the cancer has returned. The symptoms are all there. And she supplicates, asking my Sahiba to help her. I don't want to die once the baby comes. It would break my heart. It would break Rohit's. My body is so racked with sobs, I have to gulp for air. I reach for my dupatta, but it is tied tightly at my back. I let the tears flow, let them collect beneath my nose, let them wet my chest with warmth. I'm so exhausted, I slouch against the wall. I look at the ceiling, it is flat. My eyes close. In my mind, I say her name again and again, asking for nothing. A calm replaces my exhaustion, slowly first, then deeply. I recognize this as the calm of acceptance. I search for disappointment. There is none. Eventually, she goes to the hospital, retrieves her report, and the room in which she opens the report is just the size of Mai's prayer cell. This is a story about faith, about supplication to a larger understanding. And it is inherently a story about pluralism. You find solace, comfort, understanding where it calls to you from a profound acceptance of our place in a larger fabric. So let us return to the question that Women's Web posed in the title to this talk, how your voice holds the power to embolden the voice of the community. And let us step back from thinking solely in a linear fashion. That is, let us not think cause and effect, action and result, because art, literature also works in subtler, more nuanced ways. It is a powerful influencer that dissipates and radiates ideas along multiple axes, not a single line. Therefore, if we think of Shashi Deshpande's story of the princesses of Kashi and their powerlessness, I asked you to hold on to the thought about breaking the silence. That story reinforces the importance of breaking the silence. Neera Kashyap's supplication highlights powerfully that organic plurality, that multiculturalism that characterizes our lives. It emphasizes that it's unnatural for us to be caged by gender, religion, class, caste, or race. I see the story as somehow reassuring us that we need not be afraid that our identities will be compromised by crossing boundaries. On the contrary, we must celebrate and value the multiplicities. I said we would return to the question of whether stories can shift our thinking. Stories are ways of reinforcing and indeed, yes, subtly, strongly shifting ways of thinking. Stories, nuanced and quiet, bold and confrontational, they move communities to listen and think and debate and ultimately embolden their collective voice. I thank Women's Web, gatherer of multiple thinking voices, for inviting me to speak at this event, the Orange Flower Festival, for having me present the keynote. I thank my publishing house, Context, and the lovely people in it for connecting me with Women's Web, Jack Randa for supporting me. And I would like to close with these lines from Amanda Gorman, the extraordinary young Black poet laureate who read at the inaugural ceremony for the US president a couple of days ago. She could be said to be one of the symbols of how one voice can embolden the voice of a community. As she said in an interview with the BBC, it's about building the future through the elegance and beauty of words. The final lines of her poem that she read at the inaugural ceremony, she, a 22-year-old skinny Black girl, as she calls herself, in front of the entire world. The final lines of that poem are, "The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it. if only we are brave enough to be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Indra Chandrasekhar. That was a lovely, such a powerful session. And I mean, like, as a community, our community is, we help women to share their voices, share their stories. For ages, women's voices have been silenced. Their stories are not heard. So this is our aim as a community to give women that space where their voices are heard without being judged. And I mean, this is so powerful. When as a digital manager, when I see everyday comments like, oh, there's someone reading a story and saying, no, comments like, oh, it feels like you are telling my story. That is our yay point. That is like, okay, we have achieved what we are here for.
Yes, really. I think it is a very powerful and exciting and empowering thing for one personally to be able to facilitate a platform where other people's voices can be heard.
Yes.
I see that there was some comments and questions, and I think somebody has said that the stories are tempting. And I want to say that if you want to read them, you can of course buy the book, which I'm promoting. But then more than that, I think you can go to the website of Out of Print as well and read the stories. Many of those stories, the two stories I read up there, and then many of the stories are really quite wonderful, as indeed they are on Women's Web. So yes, I think that's opportunity to read. But it is also, I think, very exciting and interesting always to have interactive sessions or sessions where you can engage with the presenter, because I mean, even in the Zoom world where we have to work in a kind of different sort of way, I think that does bring together an energy. So now one of you will have to tell me what the orange flower is.
Orange flower is it's a logo of Women's Web. It's like that. It represents it represents a community. We are the center in the middle, and the power of the community represents that.
Oh, so, how nice. Yes, that's very nice. It's a very nice symbol.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for this lovely session. And a question for our attendees: what makes you unique as a writer? Share your answer in the YouTube comment box, and don't forget to drop your link to your blog or your social media handle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I shall join the other sessions by clicking on my other Zoom link. Thank you so much. Bye.
So we move on to our next session, and it is on a why podcast and how to extend your brand and voice to this exciting medium with Chavi Sachdev. Hi, Chavi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So let me introduce Chavi. Chavi has been involved in creating and producing podcasts since 2008. Through a company, Sonolog, she provides training and consultations for broadcasters of all stripes. So Chavi, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I just took a sip of my tea. Right, I'm going to, I brought a small presentation. We have 25 minutes. So I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time giving you gyan. I've saved some time at the end for questions and answers. And we are getting a cameo from my cat, who has decided she wants to participate.
The evening is exciting. Everybody should participate.
Be vocal like her.
Fun.
Be like Zizi. Ask questions, okay? Don't let it just be one way. So I've been podcasting for a long time, and we're going to try to convince you to podcast, or if you're considering podcasts, at least to give you the right way to approach it, give you some things to consider, and also possibly a plan for you to get started. So my name is Chavi. I run Sonolog, And I have done a lot of workshops for people and organizations, including people from the creative field as well as the media and different organizations. So wherever in the spectrum you are, and if you've got something to say, then there is the possibility of having a podcast. So these are some of the podcasts we've produced or been involved with. And you'll see that there are a few brands in here as well. Leadercraft is a Tata podcast. Evolution of Solutions is a Better India podcast. And Books and Beyond is by Bound India. And all of these people think that having a podcast is a good way to extend their voice, and also a good way to get information out there. So quickly a poll, if you could put in your chat just a Y for yes, if you listen to podcasts. And if you don't, then you can put in an N, just to get a sense of how many of you are actually involved with the medium already. So just in the chat, either a Y or an N, if you've listened to, let's say you've listened to at least 2 podcasts this month in January 2021. So while you're doing that, let me go on with the basics of podcasting. So a podcast essentially is a portmanteau of 2 words, a broadcast and the iPod. I don't know if you guys remember an iPod, but it was an MP3 player made by Apple long, long ago, before there were iPhones, that allowed you to listen to music on the go. And then they had this idea of putting spoken word, like talk radio, on a device that you could take somewhere with you. So that's what podcast really is. It's really like radio on the go. Now that we have Netflix and Hotstar and Amazon Prime as reference points, it's made my life easier when I go to like shadis and stuff. I can tell people a podcast is basically like Netflix for your ears. Unlike a radio, where we used to get audio from earlier, you're able to do this basically anyhow, anytime, anywhere. It's hosted in the cloud. Back when I started in 2008, this is how you listen to a podcast. We had, this actually is the phone I used to have. It's a Nokia. It had a screen and it had internet, but there was no concept of like 3G, 2G, anything. There was no G. And I think I had like an 8 MB data cap a month. And what you had to do is use a cable for your internet-enabled device, subscribe to a podcast on your computer, and then plug your cable in and sync it. So at least one person in the chat remembers back when. And now, it's totally on the go, wherever you are, whenever you want. So podcasts live on the cloud, and most people listen to them doing other things. These are the basic places where people consume podcasts. And you can, unlike a radio show, so for example, say you're a fan of something that comes on the radio on Sundays at 8 a.m., but you're limited by geography and time, and you have to be, if it's a Mumbai station, you have to be in Mumbai to listen to it. With a podcast, you can listen to anything that anybody has put out there from wherever you are, whenever you want to, because it is completely location and time agnostic. As long as you have an internet-enabled device, you can listen anywhere. Today, especially after the pandemic, we actually saw a surge. There are more than 1 million podcasts on the Apple Podcast Store and more than 5,000 podcasts from India. Not all of them are active, but given how late we've come to the party, this is quite a big accomplishment. So you can, if you start now, you are really ahead of the curve. And I think that's a good reason to consider having your podcast for yourself, your organization, or your brand, or whatever you're looking at doing. So, a lot of people ask, why podcast? So I'll tell you why podcast. And one is because they are very, very immediate. You don't listen to them in a crowd. You don't listen to them with your family on a couch. You're listening to something and it is happening as you listen, right? It could have been recorded later, but for you, it's immediate and you're consuming it through a device and your headphones, and the person is talking to you. So it's really, really intimate and immediate. Most podcasts are made by the people you're hearing. So they are not filtered through by levels and levels of bureaucracy or TRPs or what will sell, right? This is very democratic. Podcasts are not put out by big networks generally, and therefore you have a lot more control over what you're putting out, and the messaging is really in your control. It's completely what you have to say that will go out. Another way I really like it is, again, coming back to the fact that it's unfiltered by big conglomerates. You can give voice to people who generally are not given a platform. On Women's Web, look around you. There are panels all the time, right? Every panel has so many men on it. Now, if you're in charge of figuring out who you should give a voice to, you have so much more agency in picking the people who have been impacted or have been, doing something that your voice is going to amplify. So it's a nice way to cut out all the powerful people who make these decisions and actually literally give voice to the people who are sidelined. They're low cost compared to a lot of other media, especially video. If you have a mobile phone, you can basically make a pretty decent podcast if you just put a little effort into it. And they're also accessible because most of us, at least in India, we have more mobile phones than toilets, and everybody's got data. It's really cheap as well now. You can get data plans for like 80 gigs a month and without blinking an eye. So podcasts, if anybody has a smartphone or internet, they are really, really easy to share. And finally, podcasts are very useful. So they are of great utility and value for both you and the listener. So I'll tell you how I think this works. So as a listener, you could get entertainment through a podcast. It could be fun. It could be giving information they didn't have, solutions to problems that they need fixed. And for you, it could be a showcase of your expertise, domain knowledge, your brand positioning. It could be a way to share something that that you think should be out there. And of course, it's a really great way to build a tribe, to get people together around a subject, a topic, or an issue. Podcasts have been called empathy machines, but they're also not just about, development sector, sanitation, bringing tears to your eyes and moving you to make attitude changes. It's also a really good way to bring people around anything, a tool or a game or a show you watch or something you're creating. If you're writing a book or you're delving into a certain topic, all of your listeners are choosing to listen, and you're going to build a listener base that is connected through the audio. So I feel like podcasts can be useful for creators as well as for listeners. So we are going to take questions at the end. I'm going to try to keep track of your Q&A in the chat box, especially about hosting. So I'll just save that for a little bit later. I don't even know what she wants. She just wants voice. Give voice to the unheard. So moving on. I say the question is not why podcast. The question is why not podcast? And now we come to the second part, which is how can you use podcasts to extend your brand or voice? Somebody pointed this out. Yes, a podcast is not for everyone, but there is no reason to consider how you could use it and how it could be useful for you, especially going back to what I said before, if you have any of these things to share, if you've got information, something to entertain, educate somebody, maybe bring about attitude change, bring together people who love, bappi rehri, like whatever. You can, if you've got something of value, then why not put it out? So I would recommend before you start though, you want to be realistic. Is a podcast for you? Do you have value and utility to share? Podcasts are often ego vehicles, which is not to say that that's bad, but if you want people to keep listening to you, and chances are you're not a major superstar personality that people already know or want gossip or information about your personal life, chances are that you just talking about yourself is probably not super valuable for somebody else. So what can you share? What will be useful or actionable for your listener? Don't listen to mommy. Everybody's mums are fans of theirs, but listen to your employees, your colleagues, your friends, your cohort. And then also think about what resources do you have in terms of time, money, people, and if you can commit to this. You don't want to start and then 3-4 episodes down the line be like, I'm done, I have nothing more to say, or it's too hard, because you don't know what you're up against. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through just what's required. And what I would say is start with a vision and a mission. Make a list of who you're going to talk to if you're doing it yourself, if you're just going to speak, or you're going to have guests on it. Think of dynamic people who can really hold forth and have something useful to share. Then you want to chart your content. How are you going to record it? When are you going to record it? Why? Like, really think about it. There is so much content out there. Are you going to put out something useful? I keep coming back to this because ultimately it's an attention economy. And if you're not giving something of value to the listener, after a few podcast episodes, how much ever they love you and want to champion you, they will probably look or listen to something else. To start the process, you need to first plan. You'll notice that recording is only like 1/5 of the whole thing. It's not as easy as turning on a microphone, hitting record, and then uploading it into the cloud. So you want to have a plan. You want to look at equipment, decide your production flow, then do the recording, and then think about distribution. I'll just break this down really, really quickly for you. When you make a plan, you want to figure out what's the format. Are you going to have an interview, a panel? Are you going to have somebody with you? And what's the flow going to be like? Like, are you going to just share information? Are you going to have a discussion? Are you going to have a Q&A? What? Then think about where you're going to have the hardware. Are you recording in your house? Are you recording in a studio? If you do, you need a microphone regardless, headphones. What are you going to record on? There are checklists online. My website has a few that I can point you to. Just you'll have to search. And there's loads and loads of information, but you need to know what to look for. So, you would look for like, what do I need to set up? What is a good mic for podcasting? Things like that. You'd also want to, if you have the people, figure out who's going to do what. Are you going to conduct the interview? Are you also going to host it? Are you also going to edit the audio? Who's doing what? And then you have to record after you've made your plan so that you are getting good content, and you are also figuring out what the setup is. If you're doing remote recording, you need to have a tool like Zoom and good mics and a quiet place. So when you're doing your recording, you have to be mindful of all these things so that your audience gets something great and you get something great out of it. And then you have to think about distribution. So you would choose a hosting platform where the audio lives, and you have to put up metadata, which is like SEO, keywords, a title, a subtitle, so that people can find you. I mean, you're going to send people, but also you want other people to just accidentally find you because the topic they're looking for is what you've put out stuff on. And then you want to think about having a web page, and you want to think about marketing through social media or networking or your newsletters and things like that. Just making the content, unfortunately, is not enough. There's a lot of pre-planning, and there's a lot of post-marketing and distribution. And then, is it right for you? Are you going to have a podcast? And if you are, then think about these things. Maybe you don't want to, maybe some point is good, but maybe during the pandemic is not good. Or if you think later you'll get funding for it or something. These are all factors that you should consider. And a lot of people think of podcasts as change makers. They are very, very good vehicles of creating attitude shifts, make people think of something else, and for people to come together. So they're very powerful. And as a tool, it's a good thing for you to think about what you want to achieve with your podcast, besides having fun and having a good time with it. So I think there is no time like the present to start your podcast. And this is obviously a very short dive into why I think everybody should have a podcast. But let's have some questions from you. I see some, I'll scroll through, but here's one to get you started. Would a podcast help you? And if it would, then how? Okay, I'm looking through your questions. Yes, the podcast should definitely fit into your branding strategy and profession. For example, right now we're working with the legal team, but they are going to talk about the law, and it's pretty niche. It's for a certain segment of the law, corporate law. So, if they started talking about Bollywood, I don't think anybody would really care about lawyers' opinions on movies. And okay, somebody's asked about equipment, and yeah, the pluses of podcasting is that most people do something else at the same time, and you can multitask and absorb information. So it is picking up. Like in the West, 65% of all Americans listen to podcasts now, and they young people, especially the youth, when they poll them, say that it's their go-to for news and in-depth dives into any topic. The best platform to host a podcast depends on your budget. And there are already people who've put out like tables comparing different podcast hosts. I'd listed a few. Libsyn, Blueberry have been around for a very long time, Zencast.fm. Most of them are abroad. There's not very many in India. When I would also just caution you that if you are putting up, if you're using a free host, there are a few things to think about, like the fine print, who owns the IP, and we want to also consider things like advertising, like do you have a say over where the ads come from or who the ads are from. So there's nothing wrong with going with free hosting, just be mindful that there is no such thing as free. They're getting something from you, and that could be like it's harder for you to get analytics and numbers if you are beholden to one host. If you're going with a free host, they won't really let you distribute everywhere. And finally, to answer that, if some of you are bloggers, you'll know the difference between having your own domain name, like vegetarianeating.com versus vegetarianeating.wordpress.com or livejournal.com. Like it's ownership. And not so, you want to own it and then have the agency to do whatever you want. So popularizing your podcast, getting people to find you, and the search engine optimization question all tying together. So podcasts are indexed by text. You need SEO because people are typing to find you, or if they're talking to Alexa, it's still words. So when you put your podcast up on a hosting platform, you have the option always to put in keywords and categories that help people find you. And then I would encourage you to have a web page as well, where you embed that same audio. You're not hosting it again. It's pulling from the same place, but you put in a description, you put in maybe some good quotes from your podcast, and then you can be found that way. You guys are very complimentary. Thank you. And for poetry, absolutely. I don't know if you guys have, there's a poetry podcast in the most empowering podcasts category here that I really loved. And yes, you can do guest podcasting like you do guest blogging. There is an international site called Audrey, Audry, if I'm spelling it right, that helps you be a guest and also find guests for your podcasts. They haven't grown very much in India, but hey, maybe you can be a guest on an international podcast, get yourself listed. And another way to popularize podcasts is to do cross promos. So if I have a podcast, I'll make like a 30-second promo. And your podcast, you can run my 30-second promo. And in my podcast, I can run your 30-second promo. So, we can find a new audience. Top tips for people who've never done a podcast before: have a plan, really. Figure out what you want to say and make a pilot and run that. Don't do the full episode, but make a small pilot and run it by people are going to be honest with you. That is something I can't stress enough. Don't go with all your besties who love everything, but get good feedback. And if necessary, go in a different direction. So all of us are different. We have different opinions, different backgrounds, different things to say, and they're all valuable, but you have to package it right so that other people also want to hear it. So practice, be authentic. Don't be an RJ on the podcast. Be yourself and be honest, authentic, and make sure you're on point with what you're doing and get good feedback. Marketing your podcast in India is easy in India, but monetizing it in India has been a challenge because it's very nascent. We are still trying to figure out getting brands on board. I know now advertising agencies are pitching them to clients, but as of now, the majority of podcasts, if they're not produced by a news organization, are made by indie podcasters, individuals. And, almost nobody has been able to give up their job to just become a full-time podcaster so far. If you have a team working with you, it's obviously easier than doing it yourself. Again, coming back to how podcasts are indexed on Google, you can submit your podcast through your host onto Google Podcasts. And yes, you need keywords for all of that as well. SEO, I'm not a master, but there are enough and more tutorials online, even little blog posts about SEO. And when you host it, the good hosts, the paid hosts, will give you options and even suggestions. So you can index your podcast according to what genres are out there. All right, I'm just going to scroll through the chat again to see if there are any questions that I have missed. Right. I think we've covered everything. Anybody want to answer this one? What is the biggest obstacle you face in starting a podcast? Riyanka has asked about making a podcast stand out. So, there is a danger of getting lost in the crowd, but we have only 5,000-ish Indian podcasts. So that's not bad. I mean, think of how many YouTube videos are out there, and getting noticed is so hard. So network, push all your connections, try to, if you have alliances in the press or any sort of community groups, Facebook groups, publicize it. Don't hold back. If you think you're doing something good and you think people should listen, tell them. One of the things I used to do pre-COVID, I've mentioned shadis, where lots of aunties and uncles have asked me what I do and they're confused. Again, pre-COVID, don't do this now. And don't even meet people and touch their phones. I would take their phones, and most phones come with a native podcasting app. And then I would subscribe them to my shows and then hand it back to them and say, Ab isko suno, like, listen to this now. So be shameless about it and tell everybody what you're doing, and get your guests to tell other people they've been on your podcast so that they could also help you publicize it. All right, I think my time is up. And if there's anything else, you can reach me on my website or through email or maybe through Women's Web. And I do workshops very often that break this stuff down into different steps that you can follow with worksheets and all kinds of things. Who will listen to you? Make a pilot and see where you are and revise it if you feel like you're not going to hit all the right notes. But hey, I'm sure you've got great stories and good experiences that people will relate to. You just have to find out what to say. And good luck to all of you who've started, and all the best.
Thank you, Chavi. Thank you so much for this insightful session. And the last one just stuck on me. It's when somebody asks you, what do? You just sign them up. This is what I do. Come on. This is how you self-promote. That's wonderful.
So feel free to borrow that tip.
Definitely. That's a pro tip. But thank you, Chavi. And if you have any questions, please do put them on the chat box on YouTube, and we will take them up later. Chavi can answer them later on. And so we okay. Question for the attendees: if you have your own podcast, do share the link in the comment box too, so that everyone else can listen. So, like Chavi said, you must promote yourself, and please do that. Please post, share your podcast link in the comment box. And thank you, Chavi, again for being part of this Orange Flower Festival 2021. And,
my pleasure. And I'm so happy that you've included podcasts in the Orange Flower this year.
Yeah, it's a new medium, and we were really excited to do more about this. And just a quick mention that if you are sharing anything about the event on social media, do remember to use our hashtags Orange Flower 2021 or the Orange Flower Festival. Please do share it with your pictures, with your comments, everything, whatever you are sharing on social media. Please do share it with our hashtag. And thank you, Chavi. We move on to our next session, which is the awards and announcement. So we'll please bear with me. I'm trying to figure out. So these are the finalists of the Orange Flower Festival. If you can. So Richa S. Mukherjee. Sorry, folks. I'll just try to figure out the screen sharing thing. 1 second. I will quickly. I hope you can see the screen. I hope I'm in on. Okay, apparently, I'm not sure. So, folks, I'm really trying to figure out to put this on the slide share mode, the presentation.
Joe, can you close the side panel view?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Yes, found it. So, folks, yeah, I finally found out how to share the screen. So here are the finalists for Orange Flower Awards 2021 for humor. We have Richa S. Mukherjee, Gunjan Pant Pandey, Pranati Sheltenkar, Shalini Malik, Soumya Srivastav, Vaishali Sudan, Nupur Nathan Sachdeva, Tina Sakira, Smita Chandra, and Sonal Singh. So we move on to apparently I can't move the So Orange Flower Award for Writing with Humor. The runners-up is Nupur Nathan Sachdeva. Congratulations, Nupur. Yay! Can we have a round of applause? Yes, we cannot hear her, but so congratulations, Nupur. And Orange Flower Award 2021 for Writing with Humor. The winner is Richa S. Mukherjee. So yay, please share a yay in the comment box. So the finals for Orange Flower Award 2021 for poetry. Here are the finalists. Anupama Dalmia, Dr. Soumya Goel, Elora Mishra, Kalpana Manivanan, Praniti Guliani, Vijayalakshmi Harish, Arpita Nayak, Jasmine Khurana, Munmun Chaudhary, and Zehra Naqvi. The Orange Flower Award 2021 for poetry. The runners-up is Praniti Guliani. Yay, Praniti, congratulations. Please do leave comments for Praniti. Oh, wow. So, and the Orange Flower Award 2021 for poetry. The winner is Elora Mishra. Congratulations, Elora. So we move on to the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Short Film. The finalists are Sileksha Kadam, Nishtha Shanti, and Ritvika Banerjee. The Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Short Film. The runner-up is Sileksha Kadam. Congratulations, Sileksha. And the winner of the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Short Film is Nishtha Shanti. Let's give us a moment for everyone to congratulate the winners and the runners-up. So these are the finalists for Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Artgram. Rashi Roy, Manvi Vahane, Arpita Nayak, Priyanka Nair, and Deepa Gopal. We will announce the winner and the runners-up after the panel discussion. So congratulations to all the winners and the runners-up of Orange Flower Awards. Please remember to send us your, because we will be sending trophies, do remember to mail us your postal address at community@womensweb.in with the subject line awardee of OF 2021. And I think it's almost, it's time for our panel discussion. Hello, Trisha.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Ready to talk about writing.
Yes, yes, yes. So we are now starting our next session, which is a panel discussion on practical and insightful ways to develop your unique writing voice and get noticed in your journal. So we have with us in this panel discussion Trisha Das, Andale Vajid, Smriti Lamek, and Lakshmi Priya. Let me introduce the speakers. Trisha Das is the author of 5 published books. She has also written columns and short stories for Magical Women and leading national and international publications. In her filmmaking career, Trisha has directed over 40 documentaries, won an Indian National Award, and was UGA's International Artist of the Year. We move on to our next panelist, Andale Vajid. Andale Vajid is the author of 26 published novels, and she writes across different genres such as romance, YA, and horror. Her horror novel It Waits was shortlisted at Mummy Award to Screen 2017, and her novel House of Screams has been optioned for screen by a reputed production house. Andalib's novel When She Went Away was shortlisted for the Hindu Young World Prize in 2017, and she has 2 upcoming novels with Penguin and Penguin Dapple in 2021. Andalib is a hybrid author who has self-published 9 novels in 2019 and 2020. Smriti Lamek is a journalist and published writer who has worked with leading media houses. She also wrote a widely popular and prolific parenting blog called The Mad Mama. Interesting. An activist and feminist, she was part of the teams that ran annual social media awareness initiatives on child sexual abuse and violence against women. A classical musician, passionate gardener, voracious reader, and a lover of Indian craft, Smriti is constantly seeking ways to weave her interests together. So our next panelist is Lakshmi Priya. She would be moderating this session. Let me introduce Lakshmi Priya now. She is a writer, an artist, a leadership coach from Bangalore, India, with an MBA in marketing and finance with over 15 years of corporate experience. And she currently works with an international investment banking firm as the head of coaching. However, Lakshmi's true passion has always been spinning a damn good yarn. While she has always been an avid reader and writer, her serious writing journey began in 2014 when she became an integral part of the Write Club in Bangalore. Along with the core team members of the Write Club, she created Late, a publishing platform, and churned out 2 anthologies herewith. So she has been part of 3 anthologies with the Hive, a publishing collective for anthologies. Apart from the above publications, she writes regularly for Women's Web and has published in 2 of our yearly anthologies, When Women Speak Up and No Apologies. So welcome everyone, welcome panelists. Hello, hi Lakshmi.
Hi, Joe. Hi,
The stage is
Andalib.
all
Hi.
yours.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Smriti. Hi, Trisha. It's so good to see you guys. To be honest, I keep seeing, I think somewhere we're all connected in different Facebook groups, Women's Web, of course, and I think I know Andalib from Senior Reading Raccoons and Readers Forever, and Smriti also. I have seen your engagement in multiple places. The same thing with Trisha. So it doesn't feel like I'm meeting you guys for the first time. So that's good, especially with this pandemic, right? So the topic is how does a writer find their voice, right? And I think for me, one of the first subjects or the first things as a writer is you cannot become a good writer without being a reader, right? So I think we should start there. how important it is to read, what authors to read, what kind of books to read, what kind of regions to read, what kind of genres to read, for somebody to be able to find their voice. So, I mean, any one of you can start up, whoever has inputs first. Of course, we'll go to everybody.
I'll begin.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think, this has been said often enough that, writing, reading is one of the most important tools to be a writer. But I don't think unless, people really attempt it, like I myself, I've always been a reader myself. So I never really thought of this. But I attempted writing a genre that I hadn't read much of myself, and I realized the truth of the statement myself. I attempted writing a fantasy, which I don't think was really a very good piece of work, But that was also because I hadn't read enough. I hadn't read enough in that genre. I didn't know the different things that were already out there. So unless someone reads enough, there are you won't know what's already been done. You won't know how it's been done. It's also a sort of things that reading is a sort of thing that kind of you absorb organically, and it comes out when you're writing. It's not something that it's not like it's in a way it's like food. You eat it and it gives you energy to do things, but you don't reading kind of helps you take the next step, and you don't realize it. You have to make it into a sort of intrinsic habit, and not just think that, oh, only if I read well I'll write well. It has to eventually it has to become normal for you to pick up a book as much as it is to want to write, and whatever reason that you want to write.
I think it's funny that you said know what's out there, because I always tell anyone who wants to write a book, I'm like, if you have a book idea, the first thing you should do is go to Amazon and check if the book's already been written, because 99% of the time the book's already been written.
Yes.
So you should read not only to find out what's out there, which is a very big reason, but also to know yourself, because you can only really find out about your own writing style and about yourself, knowing yourself, through reading other people's books, what you identify with, which cultural experiences you choose that you're drawn to. And those are ways not only learning about the books or the craft, but also learning about yourself. So that's why it's important to read.
I agree, Trisha. I think it is very important to read, not just, well, definitely to know yourself, as you said, but also because it's important to be able to pitch yourself to yourself. And when you start writing, where do you see yourself as a writer? How do you push yourself as a writer? When you've read a variety, and when you've read wide and deep, only then do you get a sense of, it's very easy the moment you start writing for someone to tell you, oh, you should write. But unless you have read enough, I don't think you're in a position to know whether you should write or not. At least that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely true. I think, we've already established, like Andalit said, that, it is not you read and then you, whatever you learn from it, you just regurgitate it on another piece of paper or a Word document, right? It's beyond that. It nurtures you. It lifts you up, and it's very difficult to build a direct correlation between reading and writing, but it's like how you said, Smriti, it's an intrinsic understanding that you need to expand what you read to be able to evolve as a writer. There was this one point that Trisha made, which is very valid and reminded me of a couple of things that happen at Write Club, which I'm a core team member of in Bangalore. We would have people come in who would refuse to read out what they have written, because the whole point is to give feedback for copyright issues, right? That somebody is going to copy that. And this is exactly what I would tell them, that there is nothing that you can think of. Your idea has not been, it's never happened that your idea has not been thought of by somebody else, and someone else would have written on it. The idea is not to keep focusing on writing something unique. The idea is to build your unique style of writing.
Exactly. It's not so much the idea, because whenever you come up with an idea and you tell somebody else your idea, you get one of two reactions. Number one, you get the reaction, oh yeah, it's been done before. And then your second type of reaction is, yeah, I don't know, it's never been done before. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with ideas, because nobody wants to take a risk if it's never been done before. But at the same time, nobody wants to read the same thing again and again, So that's where developing your own unique voice comes into play, because you can tell the same story that somebody else has told. And look at mythology, I mean, millions and millions of people have told our stories and mythology. But to develop your own unique way of telling it, that's about finding your voice,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely true. Yeah.
Sorry, just leading off from what you said, Trisha, I'm sure when James Joyce came up with Ulysses, anyone he passed it around to said, I don't know if you know what you're talking about, and I'm not sure this is going to work. But that is where you go with a unique voice. I mean, that is an epic, and it's been told in such a different way. So it is very important also when you're writing, and to find your unique voice and not to let anybody knock you off that path. It may work. I mean, it may bomb completely. It might not work at all, or it might just explode into something amazing. But it is, I think if you found something unique, it's important to hold on to it and explore it and give it a chance before you dismiss it as something that wouldn't work otherwise. I mean, you notice a couple of bestsellers and you realize that your voice sounds nothing like them. And so you dismiss it thinking that nobody else writes this way. But I think that's when your own self-confidence needs to kick in, and you need to realize that if nobody else writes this way, then yes, that's exactly why you need to hold on to it, because exactly as you said, every story in the world has been told before. You just need to find a new way to tell it.
I just want to add to this, I think this whole idea that a lot of new writers have, that their idea is something that's never been done before. And like Trisha said, it's already been done. It's already everything. Any story that's out there has already been told. It's what you bring to it. It's how you execute it is different. I don't think writers should let that dishearten them. And it shouldn't, stop them from exploring it. And, there are two kinds of people here. One who will say, I don't care if it's been done. I will definitely do a great job. I will do a better job, but there are also some people who will feel extremely intimidated by the kind of stuff that's already been done there. Like, there are so many different variations of the epics and even Pride and Prejudice. And, like Jane Austen's work is constantly being, re-evaluated to fit into the current world. So, because those themes are universal. So, I think new writers need to realize that while ideas are old, and, no matter how amazing that idea was, it's already been thought of, they have to accept it. But also that they are going to bring something different to it, their unique perspective, because each of us has our own, subjective, the way we've all been brought up. We're all a product of the way we've been brought up, the things that we've read, the things that we've been exposed to. So I think you have to let go of this whole thing that, this idea is mine. And I also, personally speaking, I don't like to share my ideas at the idea stage unless it's with the publisher whom I'm pitching it to, because I have to develop the idea. I can't just, I don't like to share my ideas at the idea stage, not just because it's easy to get stolen. And, I also feel like it's not ready. This is not what I want to show the world when, I'm talking about a book. I want to show it when it's been developed better.
True, absolutely. Sorry, Smriti, go ahead.
No, that's a really good point. It's about what Andadeep just said about, you want to bring your idea when it's ready. I'll take that, but I'll go back a step and talk about finding your voice similarly, that, they say that you need to write a lot to practice. And I often see writing as, I would say, working out. If you want to build a good body, you put in hours and hours of working out. And wherever you put your efforts, you see your results come in that direction. And I think one of the important things about spending a lot of time writing or making it a regular part of your day is that it's only then that you begin to recognize your voice. When we're going on talking about a voice and having your voice and having a perspective, but I think very often when you start off, you don't know what your voice is, and you don't know what your stand is, you don't know what your strength is. It doesn't it isn't as obvious or as apparent to you in the beginning as it would be when you've got a couple of years under your belt. And you can only see that when you have literally stacks and stacks of work, and then you sit back and you look at your work, and then your own style sort of takes place, and it's only then that you can recognize it, and it's only then that you can stand firm on it and not be knocked off it by, say, a publisher who feels that you should do this differently, or a friend who reads a lot and says that, you know what, I think you should. By that time, you're so clear and so confident about what your strength is and what your voice sounds like, that you can take that and run with it. But it's important to know it so that you don't get led off that path.
Thanks, Smriti. One of the points that in our virtual discussion earlier you had mentioned, which is nothing but a continuation of what you're talking about, the right feedback from the right people, right? So just to share a small anecdote, 2014, before 2014, when I was 25, actually, I had written a novel, about this young woman who's just met the love of her life, and there's some weird stuff going on and everything. And I made my mom read it. And as usual, my mom loved it, because it's a mom and she will love everything that her daughter does, right? And then I went to a group of writers and voracious readers, and I asked them to give me feedback. And you can imagine how my confidence would have shattered even with their well-meaning feedback, right? So the right people for feedback is very important. I think most of us do not have, or most of us may not be fortunate enough to be right in the middle of a circle of people who are voracious readers and writers. It's only, for me at least, when I was 25, my friends, none of them were readers and writers. Right. And when I asked them to give me feedback, the fact that I wrote something was big enough for them. Right. So I think it's very important to reach out to the right forums for getting that feedback, not just on your voice, but on your narrative and on your character development, your plots, even with nonfiction for that matter. What do you guys think about it?
No, I agree. Absolutely. It's very important. And I think as an author, I know that the best and most critical feedback you get is from your readers. In fact, one review of my first collection of short stories was called Mahabharat Reimagined. One reviewer said, Das writes lavish gibberish. And you know what? I went back and I looked at some of the passages that he had highlighted, and I thought to myself, damn, it is actually complete gibberish what I've written, and I thought back as to why I wrote like that, and it was my first fiction book, and I came to the conclusion that I felt so much pressure because I was writing mythology to write in a particular way, because that's how I'd always read mythology, so it was all the, her anchal went flying and the coal in her eyes and the curve of her waist and, all of that. I did all of that, right? Because that's what I'd always read. And it came out in my voice as lavish gibberish. So it was taking a step back after that and thinking, okay, you know what? I'm not going to allow what everybody else has done to sort of pressure me into not writing authentically. So I think it's really about feeling authentic while you're writing, feeling like this is how I talk, this is how I think, and also knowing your ideal reader, who's your reader out there. So I know that my reader is a young woman who's frustrated with the way women have been depicted in mythology. You know what I mean? And so therefore they're looking for women who are taking more control, have more agency, So readers will definitely give you the most critical analysis of your writing for sure.
But Trisha, I just have to say that's your editor's fault if that came across as, I mean, all said and done, that's the editor's job. I'm not taking up for you here. I'm just being like thoroughly honest that
I was a very inexperienced writer, but you
Yeah.
learn from all these experiences. And as a writer, I'm actually quite grateful for that review, because it taught me that I wasn't being true to myself, that I was falling under this literary pressure. And it taught me to do better and to be more authentic. And that's when I came up with this, contemporary, humorous, sort of feminist chick lit version of the Mahabharata, which I wrote in Draupadi Kuru, and that's me, that's absolutely 100% me. But it wasn't until I received those bad reviews that I found myself,
So I have a question for you. Since you picked mythology as a genre, and that's what we're talking about, what made you realize that was what you wanted to do?
I think, again, when we say looking for your own cultural experiences, I think we've all had a lot of very similar cultural experiences as Indian women growing up in India. Our grandparents or our parents would have shared stories from the epics with us. There would have been a lot of talk about, for me specifically, the Mahabharata. My grandfather used to talk a lot about it. So in college, I used to tell my roommates stories from the Mahabharata, and they used to always be like, Trisha, we never realized, but the Mahabharat's like really masaledar. Like it's really like, like there's a lot going on in there that you don't hear from the pundits, And I was like, yeah, they were like, you should write a book, yeah, seriously, And that's where it came from, just showing another side of exactly the same thing, and then bringing the women angle into it and the feminist angle, which I think is so important, So again, it's finding your ideal reader, a reader who is frustrated with the way that things are being done, and perhaps you can give them something different,
You have challenged B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata, or was it Ramayana? No, Mahabharata.
Sorry, say that again.
Was it Ramayana or Mahabharata that B.R. Chopra would play every Sunday? Both. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's where we grew up, right? And he had a script writer, obviously a bunch of script writers, and a whole nation grew up thinking that was gospel, It's like all of a sudden one script writer's word was made into absolute gospel for an entire country. That's the power of it,
True. I see Anjali busy writing notes, so I would love to hear from you.
No, I actually don't have. I'm a very organic writer, so I didn't really do any. I don't really think so much before doing something. I became a writer. I wouldn't say by chance or anything. This is what I always wanted to be. From the time I was 6 or 7 years old, I wanted to be a writer. And I've kind of stuck onto that. And, despite rejections, my first novel, I continued. And I can be very bullheaded that way. And so, when I think about this, it feels like it's like a really long time ago that, that I was thinking about developing my voice and all that, because I've been writing for 10 years now. So it's just, I was just thinking, how this whole thing goes, how, what sort of takeaway can new writers have from what I have to say. So I was just trying to think of that. But earlier, going back to what Smriti said about how reading and all that lets you know yourself. I also think that reading gives you the language to know certain things, to know truths about yourself. Because when you don't have that vocabulary, when you don't have that language, I'm not talking vocabulary in a literal way. I'm talking about the language of things, the language of emotions. Reading is what gives you that. So, just to go back to the initial thing, this is what I had been thinking of this, but the topic moved on somewhere else, so I can let it go. But this was something that I feel strongly about.
Wonderful. Yes.
Sorry, Andari, I agree. I think most of us who write, it is very organic. the journey that we're talking about. I think we're just managing to condense it and look back on it and create a blueprint in retrospect to be able to give to writers. But I personally don't think any of us could have actually sat down. I mean, I know Trisha a little bit. I don't know you very well, but I can tell you that it wasn't that none of us would have actually managed to do this if we had worked forward with it. Perhaps. I mean, it is precisely when you look back that you realize that that you know.
Hindsight is 2020.
Sorry.
No, I do want to add that I think, a lot of people have this sort of romanticized idea about writing. That, I don't look at it that way. For me, writing is more of, I look at it as a job, especially since I started self-publishing. For me, it's definitely become a job, one that actually pays my bills. So I'm very keen on writing as a job. I sit down at my desk every day. I work on my book, the book that I'm working on, say for 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours, in a day at least, before I move on to something else. So I think that sort of innate discipline has been there. It's been, I mean, I can look back on it, but I also know that I'm a very hardworking person. So I've been at it, following this format in the past 4-5 years at least. So the whole idea that people have that, you need an idea, you need to have this whole concept of the muse and all that, unless you're in that thing, you can't sit and write. I think you can't force writing, but you can sit down and make it into a discipline, which is what I've applied personally. I've applied personally, and writing is it's a very disciplined, proper job for me. I'm absolutely thankful, grateful. I know I'm privileged in whatever way, but I'm also grateful and thankful that I get to do this as a way, as a means of living. I really never want to work anywhere else. I want to work for myself, and I want to write books, as many as I can.
You know what they say, right? They say inspiration is for amateurs. Professionals just get down to it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think the passion, the joy, and the smiles in everyone's faces when we say things, and every sentence that is coming out is quite relatable. It's lovely to watch that. So we do have a few questions, and I thought it's 6:35. We have another 15 minutes, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more discussion. Let's pick up a few questions here. So this one is from Kasturi Patra, and this is for Andaleeb. She says that I'm in awe of your productivity. How do you write so much? Which even I wondered. And I really loved when she went away.
Thank you so much. Kasturi, I just now explained, this is basically it. There is no secret sauce. It's most of it is hard work. At the same time, I don't want to make it sound like, like you have to put in the hard work to get the results. That's absolutely one part of it. I get that, not everyone can do that because, people have jobs, I gave up, I worked 2 times in my life. No, actually I worked more than that, but 2 times I gave up my job so I could get to writing. The first time was in 2009. I quit my work. I quit my job as a content writer. And I got down to writing, and it was terrible. I didn't make any money. I was constantly broke. I'm talking about this as myself, not as part of, the whole family unit or whatever. So for me, I felt like, what am I doing? I was earning pretty okay, decently. Now I'm earning nothing, So I kind of wrote, I think in that period, I wrote 10 books. And then I decided to get back onto the whole, working scene again. And that mostly because I was bored. Writing is a solitary job. You sit alone, you write alone. So meeting other people, it kind of helps trigger a lot of things in your head. So I worked again for 1.5 years, and again I quit. And this time it's for good because I really don't see myself, So that's what I meant when I said I'm privileged. I don't have a job, which a lot of people do, So my job is writing. So if I am focused on it, I am going to be productive. So
that's good to hear, Andaleeb, because 2020 I've been working from home, had a lot of time, but I haven't been productive at all. So I wish I had your inspiration. what about Trisha and Smriti? You know, how do you maintain that discipline? Trisha, I see the frame right behind you. Quiet, I'm working on my novel.
One of us, we should all get that, you know.
Yes,
You should,
we
absolutely.
should.
I'll send you each a copy. No, but it never happens. It's a wonderful sign to have, you know, right next to your desk, but obviously the quiet never actually happens because life happens. And then you just have to kind of deal with it and move on. And I do absolutely believe that if this is going to be my only job, then I have to be productive with it. And I have to carry the book with me at all times, because I don't know if Andalip feels this way, but there is a certain amount of guilt as well. Like, you know, if I'm not being productive, you know, then what about all those other people out there that are doing this for 3 hours at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I have the luxury of doing it at 9 a.m. in the morning. So I better get down to it, because there's a certain amount of guilt associated with that. So I definitely have that. I feel like, as far as my writing goes, I sit down every day. I have a very set routine. I will get my tea or coffee or whatever. I will stare at my blank page. I'm very organized in terms of plotting and all of that stuff. So I know exactly what I'm going to do that day. I have it all planned out ahead. So there's no surprises. So I don't sit down and say, Acha, now today, what should I write about? It doesn't ever happen. You know, it is very much approaching it from a professional angle. And then you know exactly what your goal is for that day. And someday you will write really well, and some days it'll be utter crap that you have to delete in any case and throw away, you know. But definitely having the discipline to sit down and say, this is what I'm doing, A to B, I'm going to get there today.
So I'm one of those who has a full-time job. So my writing happens at 3 a.m. and 1 a.m.
There you go.
And so I'm in awe of people who do manage to, I don't look at it as, oh, you have the luxury. I look at it as, oh my God, you have the pressure of having to sit down and produce. I don't think I could do that. I mean, the reason I produce is because I'm not under any pressure to produce. I do a lot of short stories. I've blogged, I've done a lot of content. And so when I'm producing for a client content, then of course I sit down at 9 a.m. and I get to it. Exactly as you said, I mean, there is no 99% of inspiration. It's actually perspiration. You sit down, you produce. But I will admit that the most inspired writing, at least for me, comes when I'm not forcing myself to sit down and write. I also find I'm a lot more prolific in those hours because they are snatched from, you know, from the rest of my life. And
so
it's
all
2
the more
a.m.
precious.
So, yeah, absolutely. I'm just so grateful to have that time to myself that I'm like furiously typing away, and suddenly I'm amazed by the amount of work I've got done. Perhaps because there are no other pressures at that hour. So that's mine. Completely the opposite.
Wonderful. I think Tina has one more question before we move on to another question from a different topic. We'll quickly answer this. How long does it typically take to write a full-length novel and edit it?
Very subjective, no? It really depends on the kind of novel, and you know, editing is different, but writing a novel is very subjective. I mean, I wouldn't say that, you know, what I say would work for anyone else. So I don't have an answer to that. And if I honestly tell you guys how soon I write a novel, you people will freak and think. So I can't tell you that. It's a secret.
I think for me, it depends again on the novel. My first novel took me 5 years to write. And I think that was a confidence issue, because I just, you know, your first one's always the big one, you know. Yeah. And so I think it was just a question of, am I going to get this right? Are people going to like it? Is this good enough to be published? All of that, you know. So the first one took me 5 years. And then the sequel to that, my first one was Draupadi Kuru. The sequel to that, which is coming out in 2 months, I wrote that in about 3.5, 4 months. So, you know, it's just a question of the space that you're in, the mental space, your circumstances, and obviously the book that you're dealing with, how much research and all that. But I'd say Kama's Last Sutra, which was a historical fiction novel that I wrote, took me about a year, 6 months for research and 6 months for writing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now we have a very valid point from Pooja Priyamada, which also links back to finding your voice as a writer. She says that reading is still a huge privilege for many women. Language, again, is a privilege. And it is important to have, to realize that, so we have a lot of people come into Write Club who try to write in English. However, it is when we listen to what they have to say, it is very evident that they would be much more comfortable writing in their native language, and that is again something which we share feedback with them. That the same piece, you have a wonderful story, you have a wonderful plot, you've created beautiful characters. The same thing if you write in Malayalam or Kannada or Hindi, it would be the story would come out beautifully, right? So what would you say to people who, how do I say it? How would you help somebody identify to go multilingual in trying to find their voice?
I think these days there's no one way to do it. I mean, you have authors like Chetan Bhagat or even Anuja Chauhan. I mean, they all write colloquial, dialogue and all of that stuff. So there's no one right way or wrong way to do it. I feel it's not like if you're writing an English novel, it has to be the Queen's English or something like that. I think that we're past that. There was an age where that was done, and it was a very literary sort of age. But now that we're going into like the commercial writing market is fairly mature in India now. I think you are finding people who are kind of crossing those, merging the barrier between English writing and the rest of it. So I think that it's not as big of a challenge as it is, as it was previously. Now you are able to do it colloquially as well. There is a market for that.
I disagree here, because I think what Anuja has is a fabulous control of the language. So she can play with it and move between languages. She can say yahi hai right choice baby, and she can and it works when it comes from her. But I think the question was something else. You have to, I think it's important to be able to think in a language to express yourself in it, and to express the point you're trying to make. I think sometimes that is lost in translation. It's not, you're not being judged here for not speaking or writing the Queen's English. I think you're doing yourself a disservice when the point you're trying to make is lost, because there are certain turns of phrase, and if suppose they end up with an editor who doesn't edit the gibberish, sorry to tease you, Trisha, but suppose they end up with an editor who cannot draw that story out, bring out that point, then that is their loss, because they don't have the facility with the language to do that either. So I think that's a loss to the world of literature. That is a loss to the person who's trying to get themselves published. It's not judgment of you don't speak English or write English well enough. It's more a question of when you write in when you're using, say, the Hindi phrase roti bel rahe hain, or so somebody who doesn't speak it will say bana rahe hain. There's a difference. So you've got to be able to get that turn of phrase. I think that's important, and I think very often that also is lost.
Agreed, and that's
I think
where
Lakshmi was asked. Sorry, carry on.
What I was trying to say here is this is exactly where platforms that celebrate your writing, irrespective of the language, need to exist. I guess part of the reason, go on, Natalie.
No, I just wanted to say that I think there is too much of a post-colonial hangover in our lives, which kind of looks at writing in English as the only way to write, and
elite way, yes,
and so writing in different languages needs to be celebrated. It needs to be accepted, acknowledged, brought to the fore. And as you were saying, Lakshmi, about platforms, so I think that's very important. And also there has to be a sort of collaborative effort from those who write in English to those who don't, to make it, to kind of balance it out. I mean, it's definitely a very ideal sort of thing that I'm saying. That's not going to happen, I don't think so. But if that could happen, where there is a sort of equal exchange, if there is a sort of a platform, as you said, for writers of different languages. So writing in English, Indian writing should not be just confined to writing in English. So as long as I think so it has to change from various levels, from readers to publishers to editors, and I think there are a few places who are doing that, publishing. Like Juggernaut publishes in different languages on their app, and I think Amazon also allows you to self-publish in different languages. So the more people do it, the more popular it becomes. So the more normalized it is. So for people to pick up a book in a different language and not feel like they haven't read something Indian because it's not in English.
In fact, I think it's important that you write in the language that you are most comfortable in, because that's when you're giving your reader, because let's not forget, that's where this is eventually going. And you owe your reader a good book. There are readers of different languages who are being denied a good book because you have chosen not to write in their language. And that's where a translator steps in. I mean, and translators need to be good at their jobs. They're not Google Translate. They're doing a very, very important job. So if you do want to be published in English, I think it would be great if you could publish it in the language that you are most, in your mother tongue, in your native language, in a vernacular, whatever, and then leave it for a translator to draw the best out of your book, a good editor to work with them. And if that's the end goal, that you want to reach a larger audience and you don't want to restrict it to like X number of people from your state, you will, I mean, that is the other route to take.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not to forget that Women's Web has a strong platform where, there's a lot of Hindi writing, Hindi articles, Hindi poetry. And I think based on my last conversation with Aparna as well,
Has Lakshmi gone silent for everybody else too?
Yeah. I thought it was just me, my network is always playing up. So I thought it was just me, so I was silent.
No, absolutely. There is an aspirational element to writing in English, which I think people tend to emphasize a lot. And when they're automatically sitting down to write, they want to be able to write in English. If you remove that, then it'll be a much more organic process.
I have something to add since Lakshmi is not here. Something conversely happened with me when I released my first novel, and it was so my mother tongue is Urdu, but I don't know to write Urdu. I can read Urdu. I don't know how to write in Urdu. And at the book launch, I had this journalist who kept badgering me, who wanted to ask why I hadn't written in Urdu. Because I'm a Muslim, not because I am, I gave no indication that I wouldn't, that I couldn't write in English. So I don't know why he kept insisting. He kept asking, but why didn't you write it in Urdu? I said, but why should I write it in Urdu? He said, according to him, I should have written in Urdu and then got it translated into English. I said, but when I can write it in English myself, So he said, you should have written it in your own language. I said, English is my language. So that kind of finally shut him up, and he didn't have anything to say beyond that. So there are converse things also happening with people where you're expected to do or expected to write in a certain language or format because of who you are, which is something
as a patriotic exercise as opposed to a literary one.
As a pigeonholing exercise.
Yes,
exactly.
Lakshmi, when you were not there, we were just talking.
Yeah. Did you guys miss me?
Very much.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's time for our panel discussion to be closed. Not to mention, it was an absolute joy to have this discussion with you guys. It's been not just entertaining, it's been highly informative. So thank you so much. Before we close the discussion, maybe one line from each of you to help people find their voice. Just one line.
Know yourself, know what turns you on, know what turns you off. And when it sparks joy, it's your voice. If it doesn't spark joy, it's not your voice.
I'll go ahead.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I think I would just like to add to if you're passionate about writing, and it doesn't have to be writing in English. It has to be, if you're passionate about writing, then keep at it and don't give up. Keep at it, keep reading, keep writing.
True, true, true. Over to you, Smriti. I think there was some lag.
Yes, there was. So I would like to say that the most important, there will always be people who will tell you to write a book, and you will also want to write a book, but you are your first audience. So it's also important that you should be your own first greatest critic too. If you can't, you need to critique your book, and you need to be harsher on yourself than anybody else can be. That's about it.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
lovely 2021.
Thank you.
I wish
Thank
I can
you.
see you guys again this year. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Trisha.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Wow, that was a nice session, isn't it, Aparna?
Yeah, that was fun indeed. I think I really enjoyed, it's interesting to see how each writer's process is quite different.
Yes.
But even so, I think some things came out like, you need to read to be a writer. And I think, while some writers differed, I do think the importance of discipline, we can't really get away from it if we want to be stellar creators.
Yes, true. So, before the panel discussion, I left the attendees who have joined us today in suspense. With this night, where the finalists of the best artgram were there, yeah. So these are the finals for the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Artgram, and the finalists are Rashi Roy, Manvi Vahane, Arpita Nayak, Priyanka Nair, and Deepa Gopal.
Yeah, I mean, before you go on to the awardees in this category, Joe, it was fun to see the very diverse entries that came up here. And when we talk about art, how differently people interpret it, from doodling to, watercolor to looking at a mix of, photography inspired art. It was really fun to see the diversity of entries that came in this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yep. And will you do the honors with the awardees?
Yes. So first, we go with the runners-up. So Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Artgram runners-up is Arpita Nayak. Congratulations, Arpita! Yay! So we move on to the winner, and the winner of Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Artgram is Deepa Gopal. Congratulations, Deepa!
Congrats, Deepa! It's lovely to see all the comments coming in as well. Folks, keep cheering for everybody and yourself.
Yes. So now we have the finalists for the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Best Photogram. And we have Riyanka Bose Saha, Sangeeta Venkatesh, Mittal Shah, Amrita Kole, Chef Ritu Uday Kugaji, Divya Sisodia. So the runners-up for Best Photogram is Chef Ritu Uday Kugaji. Congratulations, Chef Ritu.
Congrats, Ritu.
And the winner of Best Photogram goes to Mittal Shah. Congratulations, Mittal.
Hey, Mittal. I think photogram as well, it was very interesting that we had a range of entrants from food to travel to, a bunch of other things. And of course, given that 2020 has been the year of staying home, I think it was interesting to see how people, really reinvented photography in one sense, because obviously most of us couldn't really do the kind of street photography or, typical vacation photography that we would usually do. So, yay, like to all the nominees, I think you guys were amazing.
So we move on to the next category. Orange Flower 2021 awards for the short fiction Hindi. And the finalists are Anjali Sharma, Samida Naveen Verma, Neelam Saxena Chandra, Priyanka Kabra, Anchal Ashish, and Hemlata Bisht.
In this category, I think, it's own experience, and it's so interesting because, just in the panel before we were talking about multilingual and the value of writing in every language, and it's been fantastic to see the growth of the women's web Hindi community. And as Pragati Adhikari, our editor for Hindi, would attest, like the range of short fiction that we are publishing, in fact, on our platform, from the time that we began to today, has grown by leaps and bounds. So I think it's fantastic to see the Hindi community of contributors as well as readers growing as well. And yeah, let's go on to the awardees.
And the runners-up in the short fiction Hindi category is Priyanka Kabra. Congratulations, Priyanka. And the winner in the short fiction Hindi category is Samida Naveen Verma. Congratulations, Samida.
Yay, Samida.
So we move on to the
next one. Yeah.
Yes, next category, which is writing on wellness and fitness. And the finalists are Arpita Nayak, Sonal Singh, Rashmi Jain, Swarnali Nath, Pallavi Prakash Kumar, Soumya Srivastav, Shruti Sharada, Priyanka Kabra, Anupama Dalmia, and Tanushri Ghosh.
Congrats, folks. I think in the category on wellness and fitness, it was great to see that there was a lot of focus on mental health as well this year. And especially, of course, mental health and generating more awareness about mental health is important at any time, but especially given the year that we passed through. So I'd like to thank not just the finalists, but all of you who nominated yourself in this category. I think you're doing such valuable work. So yay for everybody.
So the runners-up in this category, writing on wellness and fitness, Sonal Singh. Congratulations, Sonal.
Yay, Sonal.
And the winner in this category, Shruti Sharada. Congratulations, Shruti.
Congrats, Shruti.
We move on to the next category, which is
the Orange Flower Award 2021 for Poetry in
Hindi. Yeah. So the finalists are Rashmi Jain, Gunjan Kapoor, Seema Taneja, Neelam Saxena Chandra, Priyanka Kabra, and Harshita Davar, Daisy Bala, Shweta Vyas, and Namrata Singh.
Congrats, folks.
And the runners-up is Harshita Davar. Congratulations, Harshita.
Go, Harshita.
And the winner for Poetry Hindi is Seema Taneja. Congratulations, Seema.
Congrats, Seema. I think Hindi poetry as well was one of the categories which saw an enormous amount of interest this year, and we had received a lot of very high quality entries. So no doubt it was a very tough category. So if you did nominate yourself and you didn't find yourself among the finalists this year, I think you can really take pride that it was a very tough category. So hopefully we'll see everyone coming back next year as well.
So move on to the next category of awards, which is writing on parenting. And the finalists are Nupur Nathan Sachdeva, Suhasini IP, Anjali Sharma, Pallavi Prakash Kumar, Natasha Perry Thomas, Sonal Singh, Srimati Sen, Aisha Shah, Dr. Sonali, and Sharanya Mishra. And the runners-up is Pallavi Prakash Kumar. Congratulations. Yay.
Congratulations, Pallavi.
And the winner is Srimati Sen. Congratulations, Srimati.
Congratulations, Srimati. I think this is one of those categories that we've had right from the inception of the Orange Flower Awards. And, I continue to be amazed every year at the quality of entries that come in, but also how innovative many of them are. And, how people really take the effort to talk about not just things that are happening in their own lives, within their own families, but, really relate it often in a larger social context and make it relevant to so many more people. So it's really fantastic to see that. Congratulations to all of you.
So we move on to the next category for Best Travelgram. So our finalists are Divya Sisodia, Sangeeta Venkatesh, Rashi Roy, Khushbu Motihar, Haimanti Bhattacharjee, and Smita Pal. And the runners-up is Divya Sisodia. Congratulations, Divya. And the winner of Best Travelgram is Khushbu Motihar. Congratulations, Khushbu.
Congratulations, Khushbu.
So we move on to the next category, which is for Most Empowering Video. And the finalists are Nishtha Shanti, Tisha Thomas, Dr. Neeti Likha Chabra, Kalpana Manivanan, Jasmine Khurana, and Anupama Dalmia. And the runners-up is Dr. Neeti Likha Chabra. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dr. Neeti.
And we move on to the winner of the Most Empowering Video, Tisha Thomas. Congratulations, Tisha.
Congratulations, Tisha.
So we move to the next category of award, which is women writing on women at work. So the finalists are Kalpana Manivanan, Sakshi Verma, Vartika Gakhar, Natasha Perry Thomas, Noor Anand Chawla, Soumya Matthew, Malti S, Vartika Sharma, Amrita Kole, and Anjali Sharma.
Joe, before you go on to announce the awardees here, I just wanted to mention that when we first started Orange Flower, and this category, of course, has been there right from the beginning, but we used to get very interesting entries, but we didn't have like a whole host of entries. And over the years, it's very interesting to see how this category has grown. And I think that really reflects the, so much more greater interest that people are taking in the world of women at work. And that also shows in the kind of entries we had this year, which ranges from people examining workplace inequality, structure, to people sharing their own, personal experiences, to people sharing their entrepreneurial journeys. So it was really diverse and very interesting to see how the writing in this category has evolved, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. So we move to the runners-up in writing on women at work categories, Malti S. Congratulations, Malti.
Congrats, Malti.
And the winner in this category is Sakshi Verma. Congratulations, Sakshi.
Congratulations, Sakshi.
So with that, we come to the end of awards in this category. And now it's the time when we launch our ebook. So I would be inviting Sandhya Renukamba. She is the community manager of Women's Web. And she would be joined by Guneet Sethi. Hi, Sandhya.
Hi, Joe.
So Sandhya would be joining Guneet, who would be actually giving out sharing the dice with Sandhya and releasing our ebook for 2021. So let me tell something about, let me introduce Guneet. Guneet is an experienced educationist. She's a trainer, she's an administrator and communications professional. She had the privilege of conducting training of trainers at rural centers and imparting life skill training in her role as a manager in quality assurance training with a social enterprise that works towards building skills and improving employability of rural youth. In addition to a full-time job, Guneet dabbles in multiple other activities. This other activities that help her realize her full potential. She's also an expressive, she's also a voiceover artist, because Guneet has a very expressive voice. Her voice modulation and expression enabled her to feature in various programs aired on All India Radio and Prime FM channels. She has also lent her voice to several education-based films. Guneet Sethi is 100% visually impaired. She started losing her vision at the young age of 25, which transformed her life completely. But her optimistic attitude and perseverance to overcome challenges never let her disability affect her abilities. So the Playhouse Pre-Nursery was her first entrepreneurial venture, which she founded at the dusk of her life when she began losing her sight, which she believed would lead to a new dawn some years later. Guneet is a popular proponent of the rights of people with disability, disseminating crucial information to people with visually impaired, and also sensitizing the mainstream society towards abilities of persons with visual disabilities. So welcome, Guneet. Now,
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to meet you, although not face to face, but yeah, meet you. So
that's the way to go these days.
Yeah, definitely. Joining Guneet in our unveiling of our ebook is Sandhya Renukamba. She's a senior editor and community manager at Women's Web.
Hi, Sandhya.
Hi, Guneet.
Many of our writers, readers, they are very familiar with Sandhya. She's a doctor turned writer and is one of the earliest contributors of Women's Web. And she's also a grammar enthusiast. So welcome, Sandhya. Welcome, Guneet. So it's time to unveil the ebook.
Yeah. So first, let me say that it's really an honor to be sharing stage with you, Guneet.
Thank you.
That was a fabulous introduction that Joe gave. And there were quite a few things I did not know, actually. And it's really wonderful to be here with you. So let me talk a little about the book that we are going to unveil today. So Women's Web has a short fiction contest every year since the past 5 years. This is something that most of our authors, at least I know, are familiar with. But for those who are new to Women's Web or haven't, heard of it, let me explain a little bit about it. So we have this short fiction contest every year based on a theme that the team as a whole decides upon for the year. And it's called the Muse of the Month. So every month we give a cue, which is within the theme itself, from a different source. And authors are supposed to send in entries based on that cue. And 5 winners are chosen from the entries that come in. Now, all these winners are eligible to be chosen from for the year-end ebook. So we have been doing Women's Web since 2016, and this is our 5th ebook, that is coming out. The others are available on Amazon. If you search for Women's Web, you will get them. So about this particular ebook, it has got 19 stories from 16 authors. And I'd like to mention specifically that our youngest author over here is only 15 years old. And she's been writing for us since the past 3 years now, and consistently winning the News of the Month, for various stories that she's written. Also, we have, one second. Yeah, so the details about the author that I'm going to read out, excuse me, because there are so many of them. So Shalini Malik, she has 2 stories. One is about a young woman who has consciously tried to move away from her mother's choices, and another about the intuition that a mother has about her child. Ujjwala Shenoy Karmarkar, both of these authors, Shalini and Ujjwala, are doctors, practicing doctors currently, not like me. I'm just doctor because I studied medicine. Ujjwala Shenoy Karmarkar has again 2 stories. One story is about a grandmother and granddaughter united against a social evil. And in another story, she takes the reader back into historical fiction, 200 years into the past, which is a really beautiful story. The third author who has 2 stories is Manisha Sahu. She's an Odia, she stays in Odisha. And she has 2 stories again, which the first one takes us inside the emergency, into a emergency situation in a hospital, and how the protagonist handles that. And the second one is about a woman who, wins a victory over a very deep-seated childhood phobia. Then Urmi Chakravarti shows us the nuances of a relationship between sisters-in-law who might almost be of 2 separate generations, almost like mother and daughter in age, and the stark difference in the way they make their choices. Then Prasanna Rao's protagonist takes a crucial and principled stand against what her family advises. And there is Barkha Shah, whose story has a relaxed first day. The protagonist has a relaxed first day after her divorce comes through. So it's just a slice of time that is presented as a short story. Then Garima Kumar Housangari, her story is about healing from unexpected trauma that has driven a rift between an actually loving couple and how they handle that. And Vijayalakshmi Harish writes about how a soulmate need not be a spouse, and that a queer platonic relationship can happen outside a marriage without threatening it. Meha Sharma writes about a young depressed woman whose mother shows her how to draw back happiness into her life. And Swagata Taraftar takes us into mythology, showing us the depths of a mother's sorrow at being taken for granted by both her child and her spouse. Then we have Shweta Singh, whose protagonist shows us that everyone has something they could really do well, despite stumbling in ordinary life. And Sangeeta Bhaskaran's story shows us that nothing is so dire that it cannot be dealt with some calm thinking, especially if you're a mother. Then the youngest writer I mentioned, Janani Balaji, she writes about childhood sweethearts who can change drastically after they have become husband and wife. And Priya Mani, who tells us about revenge, a dish that is best served cold, as we all know. Then Srimati Sen tackles the deeply ingrained patriarchy that deems a daughter a second-class citizen, and how another daughter makes a change. And Seema Taneja shows how a mother-in-law realizes that she was being the mother-in-law for no reason absolutely. So these are the stories, the 19 stories by 16 authors. They are quite diverse, as I said. There's one overarching theme that goes through these stories, which is why we have the name of the book Puneet Sethi will unveil, where they not only are aware of what they are facing or what they have given into, but also now taking steps to take their own destiny into their own hands. So I invite Guni to unveil the book.
Yes, sure. With pleasure.
Yeah, so I also have to mention over here that the book cover has been designed by Anju Jairam. You all know Anju. She is our marketing head. So yes, go ahead, please.
All right, so here we go. So there you are. Women.Mutiny is all there for you.
Yeah, it's Women.Mutiny. That's it. That's the title of the book.
Can you see the cover? Can you see it?
Can you hold it a little in the front, Puneet?
Yeah, here?
The camera.
Is that
slightly higher up?
Aja?
Yes, that's it, yes. So yes, congratulations to all the authors whose stories have been featured in this book. And I'm looking forward to your stories again in 2021 with our new Muse of the Month, contest that we have started this month. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so for especially for all the viewers and participants, let me just like Sandhya said, there are very diverse stories in it, and to honor all our wonderful 16 authors for their effort and bringing together this wonderful collection. I think I should urge all our viewers to pick up the book, read and understand the depth of these untold, unheard stories. And I think that's the least we can do for our authors. And so Women.Mutiny is all there for you. Happy reading.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandhya. Thank you, Guneet, for unveiling and this lovely book cover that Anju has designed.
Yes, sure.
At this point, I would like to mention that the speaker's gifts are 2 trees that are being planted on behalf of each speaker in Trees for Himalayan Biodiversity in Himachal Pradesh. So that's
wow. That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave the forum now and leave it to the speaker and the panel discussion. So.
Yes. Thank you, Sandhya. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Sandhya.
Thank you, Guneet. Hi, Anusha, and bye.
Anusha, you are on mute.
This has to be the statement of 2020, and I'm starting 21 also with that only.
So we are on the last leg of our Orange Flower 2021, which is an online event. We were all discussing, the team were discussing the event the gala event that we had last year in Mumbai.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think a lot of us are so happy that it's happening digitally. I'm so glad that Women's Web is hosting the Orange Flower Awards and Festival. But yes, we'll all also pretty much miss the gala event that everyone had. You know, when we could all just come together and enjoy the camaraderie and have free-flowing conversations.
True.
So maybe next year.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Anusha.
So let me quickly introduce, I've already introduced Guneet. So let me quickly introduce Anusha now. So Anusha is a lawyer turned corporate communications and marketing consultant. She helps organizations speak to their stakeholders effectively and expand their sphere of influence. An ardent believer in equal opportunity, Anusha's work on gender and life's nuances have appeared in many the leading publication, national and international publications. So Anusha, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Jyotishri. Thank you. What an evening it has been. I think all of us are waiting for the clock to strike 5 p.m. Then we could get in touch and hear everybody. And the chat box has been absolutely buzzing. So that's just amazing how Women's Web as a community is just like out there together.
So I hand over the mic to you, Anusha.
Guneet, how are you? First of all, I have to say, you are looking lovely. Look at the sari, look at the, you look beautiful. I'm sure a lot of people are going to agree with me on that.
Thank you. That's the nice way, most flattering statement to start my conversation.
No, it's not. It's true. I'm sure people are going to, somebody's going to read the chat messages for you. I can't see them right now and tell you that, no, this wasn't just flattery.
It's so nice to feel dressed up in a pandemic, right?
Oh my God, seriously. Guneet, we've heard your introduction. I think Jyotishri very nicely, she summed up as much as she could in terms of, your life's journey, but it'll be beautiful to hear it from you. But I think we'll start with addressing the elephant in the room, which is the limitation, right? Which is not being able to see. I think we'll begin with that, and then everything comes out of that whole the whole experience and the whole mental battles you fought and came over it, right? So take us back to the time when it happened. So for everybody to know, before Guneet starts, Guneet was not, she was not born with the limitation that she cannot see, nor did it happen accidentally overnight. It was diagnosed. The diagnosis came out of the bolt, like it was out of the blue at the age of 20. And then she lost the eyesight steadily over a period of 5 to 6 years. So I there, Guneet, and if you could talk about it. Talk about even the disorder, because it's rare.
Yes. So I will, because I would want the people to get aware of what this problem is all about. So yes, first of all, thank you for having me here. And it's such an honor to be on the stage of this wonderful Orange Flower Festival. The name itself is so beautiful that it feels good to be here. So yes, I had a wonderful childhood. I had a even better teenage life, full of fun, having, I was always fond of games and had, a very outdoor person per se. So, but yes, as soon as I entered my 20s, my life's journey had several roller coaster rides and huge twists and turns. And I'm glad that I landed back safely on my 2 feet, feeling stronger than ever before. But what were these twists and turns all about? Yeah. So, just like any other young girl in her 20s, I was full of enthusiasm for life. But, I had taken up teaching as my career, and I was quite happy doing that with a bright future to look forward to. But, life has other plans for you. And often has this habit of springing surprises when you're most unprepared for it. And that's what happened with me it was a routine or a regular eye checkup, or so I thought, till the doctors diagnosed and said that I am suffering from a rare genetic eye disorder called retinitis pigmentosa. As big as this word sounds, this disease usually, and that's what he told me, that this disease usually manifests itself much later in life, but I was already at an advanced stage. He went on to say that it is only a matter of time and blindness was inevitable. Blindness and me, I was shell-shocked because I didn't see it coming. Obviously, nobody would have, but that was it. I was like, oh God, like I was angry, I was furious, I even fought with God Almighty that what is this happening? I mean, it couldn't be true, but it was. So, so that's where it started, and that somehow became what should I say, another turning point in my life. Whether it was for the good or the bad, I am till date unable to decipher. Having said that, this like going blind, and then like the doctor said, there's no time limit. I could go blind in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years. And that was terrifying. That was really terrifying for me, emotionally, physically, and whatever which way. So what happened to me? What happened to me when my eyes were slowly going into darkness? First, I went into a denial mode. Second, depression overpowered me. Then I lost my job. The graph of my life was at an all-time low. It was as if I was sailing in the middle of the ocean and the oars were taken away. I was so comfortable in the four walls of my home that I hesitated to meet people because I feared that my blindness would be noticed. So that's what happened to me. And it was a very trying time. In retrospect, today I can say I'm happy that it's all behind me. But I will not deny the fact that it was a terrible time while I waited to go blind, till one day, I just decided that I need to put my act together, because I do not want to live a life which has nothing else but stagnation, gloom, and pity. So I decided there and then that I will battle it out. After all, I was an army officer's daughter, and I had grown up never to say die. So I think that was something that came from within my heart, because something was telling me that I cannot give up. So that's where, I started discovering the new me. And so there it goes. That's how it started. Yeah. So
I think, Guneet, you've literally you've narrated it so poetically. The entire, nothing. I think everybody knows the amount of mental strength that you had to show during the period. And of course, it's ongoing, it's continuous. It's not like the battle is won and the next phase is coming.
How I work towards putting my act together were 2-3 things, One, of course, that I accepted that this blindness or my limitation is something that I will have to live with. I accepted it.
Right.
Second was that all the days and weeks and hours and so on that I spent wallowing in self-pity were just thrown out of the window. And the next and the best thing ever was I changed the narrative from what is there than what is missing. I decided to become the author of my own life.
Guneet, you put it so beautifully. What you've changed, you changed the narrative, your entire perspective from what is there to what is missing. I think that's something that all of us can remind ourselves many a times, I think, through our life's journey, whenever we feel that, oh my God, what difficult situation we are in, but then what is there? So in fact, there was another statement that you had made in an earlier conversation. So Guneet is, of course, she's a motivational speaker. She talks at different forums, and please listen to her TEDx talk. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's called The Perfect Cup of Coffee. So I'm sure you will not have enough of her listening to her for half an hour now. Go and watch her TEDx talk. So there's a statement that Guneet made in an interview that she gave for Women's Web. It's there on the Women's Web platform. You remind me of that, so I'm going to quote it. Then this is very much yes, it's a surprise for you too. So this is very much, I'm borrowing it, taking the leaf from the statement that you just made about changing the narrative, right? So Guneet says, a disabled person is not the one who has lost one of his or her faculties, but one who does not use his or her abilities. So a disabled person is the one who has disabled his abilities. It is important to stop looking at what we can't do and focus on what we are capable of. What say everybody? I mean, I'm sure if we were in a live audience, of course, but physically there would have been like a huge applause for you right now.
Thank you. But honestly, that's what I feel, because if I can do so many things at par with the sighted person, if I have trained myself to work at par with the sighted people, using the available resources to nurture my skills, then why should I be categorized as quote unquote disabled?
Correct. Absolutely. And
I think
you've mentioned.
It's not as easy as it sounds. I will say that I had to do a lot of hard work to unlearn and learn to do the same things differently. There has never been a shortcut to hard work in my life. And I have always until date I'm a continuous learner.
Absolutely, Guneet. I mean, there is no doubt that to change the whole narrative, the whole perspective, and then to empower yourself personally, to be able to, so this is for everybody. I was going to say to be able to work in the mainstream, right? So Guneet chose. So, okay. First, I'm sure everybody knows from her bio what all Guneet does, but I've still made a little note of. Guneet has been a teacher, a front office communications manager, a creative writer, a trainer, a TEDx speaker, a motivational speaker, and training facilitator. She has done all this and continues to do it while working in the mainstream, which means that with Guneet's caliber and skill sets, she is multi-talented. She could have easily gotten a job at a blind school. But she said no. Why should I go and teach at a blind school? Why should I be a communications manager at a blind school? Why not in a company where everybody's who are labeled normal, so to say, right? It's nothing but a label, nothing more than that. Why not work there? So I think that is absolutely remarkable what Guneet has done, which is to be a part of the system, be a part of the mainstream, and by working there, sensitizing everyone around her. Guneet, could you share experiences out of your working in the jobs, in companies, and how did that pan out for you?
It was interesting because see, where should I start from? Okay, you know, when I started decided that I have to earn my bread and butter from the mainstream. The first place where I went to outside my home was, of course, with a friend who was the country director of the organization. So I didn't have much of an issue getting into the job front. But then I moved on to other places where I, you know, the people there were so apprehensive to begin with, because I don't blame them. They had never worked with a blind person. So obviously they didn't know what I could do, or, you know, how I handle my computer, or if at all I can work on a laptop, you know. So there were so many ifs and buts in their minds.
Right.
So I had to go through several rounds of interviews to kind of convince them that at least give me a try, you know, because I was determined that I wanted to work in the mainstream. And so I was okay with rejections and, oh, we are sorry, or we'll get back to you. I heard that several times over and over again, but I was okay. I was okay till I found a niche for myself.
Right.
Yeah. So when I started working, I was given very limited and very simple roles, you know. Anyway, I decided to do what I do, and I did it most efficiently. At least I think so, and I'm proudly saying that. But I increased own roles by asking more responsibilities, for wanting to do more responsibilities, and giving the best to them. You know, I worked very hard to give a perfect, you know, to perfect my tasks given to me. And let me tell you, you know, when I probably was interacting with 60 to 100 people in my office every day. And I remember that one of my senior colleagues, you know, would often come and stand behind me while I was working on my desk, which he told me much later. And, you know, he would keep observing the way I move my fingers on the keyboard, and the way I was working on my system, on the Word document, on Excels, or my PowerPoints, or whatever. You know, till a few days later, he told me, he says, Guneet, I have been observing you do your work, and you do it so efficiently. You type faster than I do. How do you do it? You know? So, of course, he wanted to understand my software, how I work with it, and rightly so. So the thing is that if I was able to generate awareness in the 100-odd people that I interacted with every day, the so-called sighted people, and I was able to do exactly what they do in this with same efficiency, or sometimes even better, because if you can't see, you are doubly careful that you don't make even a grammatical error, right? So my idea to do perfect work was much higher than probably a casual attitude of a sighted person.
Yes.
So, so what would happen is that these 100 people, at least I knew for sure that when they interact with another blind people, some person somewhere in their life, they will not look at them with apprehension, and they will probably understand that a sighted, a visually impaired person is also capable of doing almost the same kind of jobs, you know. So that was my way of generating awareness and create a niche of self-respect in my own thoughts and the space where I work.
Beautiful. And I think kudos to you for that, Guneet. It takes, I mean, you had also mentioned once that, so just by your presence in an office of like 99.99% sighted people, you made the impact, right? One office after the other. Because that gentleman who got sensitized is going to sensitize 100 others, and then it keeps spiraling. So that's absolutely wonderful.
And yes, unfortunately, there have been unconscious biases in the organizations. But one has to take it with a pinch of salt, I guess. Although I'm still working, I will continue to kind of get rid of those biases again, also. But this feeling of being superseded, or or not expecting too much from a specially abled person, blah blah blah. So these things do happen, but you have to have an open mind for it, because all people don't think alike. So
of course, those are absolutely sometimes unconscious barriers, sometimes conscious mental barriers. And I remember you had also mentioned in an earlier conversation that so Guneet would go for auditions for voiceover as a voiceover artist. Now it's pretty clear, right? You need a voice for voiceovers, and that is it. You don't need hands, legs, eyes, hair, right? But literally, she would be looked at in terms of, but how will you do the voiceover? Why? Because you cannot see. So it's completely
it feels good to laugh it out now, Anusha, because I proved them wrong.
Yes, exactly. We are able to talk about it. We can laugh and smile. I mean, all of this because Guneet has gone through. She's been through the rigmarole, right? She's been through the absolutely tough journey, and here she is looking lovely with us, and she has won the national award. She's a recipient of the national award. Like, how many of us here are national awardees? Tell me. Guneet, how was that experience? I mean, that kind of a recognition for your work, for your spirit, and did that change something in you, or change something about your life in general, people around you?
For being nominated and then selected in the category of role model, it was quite exciting, and this was one of the most pleasant surprises that life threw at me, and of course receiving it from the Honorable President was it was like a dream come true. Yes, after the initial high of being a national awardee, something within me, gave a call. And, it was because I sensed a sense of responsibility within myself that being a national awardee, I need to have some responsibility. Just receiving the award is, it has no meaning till I take it up as my responsibility to keep up that role model category, the award that I was awarded for. So obviously I wanted to generate that awareness. I wanted to sensitize people by becoming an example, because I wanted to do everything perfectly, which meant that I had to work overtime to prepare, to rehearse, and to deliver. So I did not want anyone to point fingers at me. Oh, doesn't matter if her work is not perfect. She has her limitations.
Yeah.
That was not what I wanted. I wanted people to say that she is perfect in her work, So for that, I used to burn the midnight oil. I used to work hard. I used to make sure I have my presentation in place. I used to make sure that I know which slide would come after what, So my delivery, because I was conscious of the fact that I have been a national awardee in the role model category, so I need to upkeep that that award. I didn't want to, just take it very casually. So, so that was my biggest change and a sense of responsibility to the award.
Right. While you may say it was a change, I think based on our conversations and the pleasure of knowing you, I seriously feel it was all already there from day one in you. It wasn't really a change, or it becomes of being just perfect and so correct at everything that you do, and never giving anyone an opportunity to point a finger at you for your work or for your caliber. No, I think all of that was already deeply ingrained in you. Even in the period of losing the vision, you came out of the dark because you said that I don't want to be called a bechari, right? You
that's true. That's true.
You hate it. And you empowered yourself thereafter and taught yourself things. And for sighted people, it's very hard to even imagine how the tiniest of things that can be a challenge, which we just take for granted.
True. That's true, because you have to be conscious of your movements, your body language, your eye contact. So these are the new things that I learned, which probably we all take it for granted. But in when you begin to lose your sight, and then I have these 20 plus years of my life where I saw the colors and the wonderful, beautiful world around me. And that memory has, I cherish those moments, those memories. They are very fresh in my mind even today. And based on that, I visualize a lot of things. I keep myself updated with what's going around in the world. I'm a very keen listener to what the youngsters say, because that's the change from my younger days to what is happening today. So I keep myself updated with the terminology the youngsters use.
Lovely.
And so that's the way to go, I guess. There's a lot of learning, and one of the biggest lessons that I have learned is that listening is such an underrated skill. It's amazing. It's amazing how much you can learn by just stopping to listen.
What a thoughtful statement to come from you, and I think it's us need to imbibe that more than ever. Yes, we all need to be good listeners. It's one of those management mantras and others we keep getting told that ultimately it comes back to the fundamentals. My parting thought before we close, I must tell one bit that Guneet didn't highlight, which I think was something really, again, something very unique to her. Guneet refused to use a white cane through her work life, professional life, personal life. She refused to use it in offices. She said, I'm fine with holding someone's hand and walking, but I'm not going to use the white cane.
Yes. Why? You want me to tell you that?
Yes.
Yes, nothing against using a white cane per se, because a lot of blind and visually impaired people are very confident using the white cane. The white cane is the guiding force to their mobility. For me, it was my very personal decision not to use the white cane, because I felt that I would lose my vanity. And so yes, I'm very conscious about I like to dress well, I like to follow fashion, and so I thought white cane would just be a disturbance, and I just would I'm more comfortable holding somebody's elbow and walking around.
Absolutely precious. I think we'll close on this note, Puneet. Everybody knows that the real reason is that you are absolutely wanting to be independent and find your way on your own with slight bit of orientation. But you, as always, in the very Guneet Sethi style, you add the beautiful, poetic and humorous touch and talk about vanity. So lovely. Over to you, Jyotishri. So wonderful speaking to you, Guneet.
Thank you, Anusha. Thank you. It's always nice.
Anusha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guneet. I mean, after this session, it just reminds me of Amanda Gorman's, during her speech in the presidential inauguration, the last bit of it that Dr. Indra Chandrasekhar also shared. There is always light if only we are brave enough to see it. If you're brave enough to be it, it is. Guneet,
Yes,
such an inspiration. True. We are getting loads of comments on on the comment box on our YouTube, and everybody is they are so glad that
it's so nice, and thank you all for listening, and I think I for one am happy to be a part of the Women's Web family now. So thank you.
And Guneet is not saying it, but if everybody, I will repeat, please watch her TEDx talk, and she's reachable. Go to her LinkedIn page, very easy to search. She's a personality, so yes, not difficult to find Guneet.
I'll be happy to connect with all of you on LinkedIn and email, or call me if you wish. And I guess somebody should share my number.
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to be addressing any one of you if you wish to.
Yes, anyone has a question or something, if we have the time. Otherwise, you can definitely reach out.
You can connect me on my email or wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, we're slightly over time. So thank you again, Guneet, and thank you, Anusha, for this lovely session.
God bless. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
So we are finally in the last awards segment. And so we start with the last part, and we start with ArtGram again.
So before we go on to the awards, can I just mention how excited we are that our Women.MUTINY ebook has just gone live?
Oh yes, yay!
Yeah, so we will be sharing the link to that in the chat. So please do look out for it. We have a lot of fabulous authors there. So please do support the ebook. Gift yourself a nice little weekend reading, especially if some of you are taking the Monday off to have a nice long weekend. So, or even otherwise, it's a nice read, which will probably just take you a couple of hours. So do make sure you get the book for yourself, or I think it makes a lovely gift for a friend as well. We'll be sharing the link with you in just a little bit.
Sandhya is smiling away.
Yeah. I'm so happy about this. Yeah.
Okay, so we move to we are announcing the finalists and the winners and the runners up in the ArtGram category. So I'll quickly walk you through the finalists of Best ArtGram: Rashi Roy, Manvi Vahane, Arpita Nayak, Priyanka Nair, Deepa Gopal, and Neha Suratkar.
Congratulations. We had already announced this category, but unfortunately we had missed out Neha's name. So we thought it would be nice to just have the list of finalists for Best Artgram once again. And of course, while we already have announced the awardees, both winner and runner-up, once again, congratulations to all the finalists, including you, Neha. More power to you.
So this is the Orange Flower trophies that are the winners and our awardees would be getting. So please do not forget to mail us your mailing address at community@womensweb.in. See this, the lovely trophy is made completely out of recyclable material. Aparna, would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, I think it's been really lovely to work to produce a very different trophy, quite different from the usual ones, if I may say so myself, and it's made of completely recyclable materials. So that's something we're really happy about, and we hope all of you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed creating it.
So we move on to the next category, best use of Facebook groups. So the finalists are Meera Bharat, Anupama Jain, Riddhi Doshi Patel, Kavita Yalagada, Dr. Bhavi Modi, and Roshni D'Souza.
Congratulations to all the finalists. I think it's very interesting to see how each of you has used Facebook groups in your own way. And all the groups featured here are very, very different. They're all listed on our website. I think everybody should go check them out and see, which of these make sense to you. And we'll go on to the awardees, Jo.
Yes, the runners-up is Kavita Yalagada. Congratulations, Kavita.
Congratulations.
And the winner is Anupama Jain. Congratulations, Anupama.
Congratulations, Anupama.
So we move on to the next category of awards, writing with social impact in the Hindi language. Priyanka Kabra, Manvi Vahane, Seema Taneja, Sarita Nirjhara, Shweta Vyas, Smita Saxena, Hemlata Bisht, Pooja Priyamvada, and Mahima Singh.
Congrats to all the finalists. And once again, like I mentioned about the poetry category, I think Social Impact Hindi too saw such wonderful entries coming in. All of them very different, exploring a range of social issues. It's great to see all of them.
So the runners-up in this category is Manvi Vahane. Congratulations, Manvi.
Go Manvi.
And Hemlata Bisht is the winner in the writing with social impact in the Hindi language category. Congratulations, Hemlata.
Congrats, Hemlata.
So now writing with social impact in the English language. So the finalists are Namrata Singh, Piyusha Veer, Meenal Srivastav, Parvada Vardini Sethuraman, Vaishnavi Pallapothu, Zehra Naqvi. The names are cutting off.
Suchitra.
Dr.
Soumya Goyal, Jigyasa Mohanty, and Tanvi Sinha.
And the runners-up is Piyusha Veer. Congratulations, Piyusha.
Yay, Piyusha.
And the winner in this category is Vaishnavi Pallapothu.
Congratulations, Vaishnavi.
So next category for short fiction, the finalists are Swagata Tarafdar, Kasturi Patra, Anjana Gopalakrishnan, Preeti Warrior, Seema Taneja, Sonal Singh, Vandana Saxena, ELLP, Gunjan Pant Pandey, and Neha Sharma.
Congratulations to all the finalists. Again, we did get to understand from the jurors that this was an especially tough category to judge, given that, there were so many talented writers out here and such a intriguing range of short fiction, which really covered all kinds of genres. You folks really gave the jurors a very tough job to do, but they had to do it. So while a special congratulations to all the finalists, I'd actually like to give a hand to every single person who nominated themselves in this category. Well done indeed.
And the runners up is Kasturi Patra. Congratulations, Kasturi.
Yay, Kasturi.
And the winner is ELLP. Yay, congratulations, ELLP.
ELLP, congratulations to you.
So move on to the next category, Best Foodgram. The finalists are Nivedita Ghosh, Jyoti Varne, Shaheen Ali, Richa Tiwari, Komila Sunejadhar, Shaheen Nadiadwala. And the runners-up is Richa Tiwari. Congratulations, Richa.
Congrats, Richa.
And the winner is Shaheen Nadiadwala. Congratulations, Shaheen.
Go, Shaheen.
Next category is for Most Empowering Podcast. So this is a new category that we have included in this year's Orange Flower Awards. And the finalists are Padma Priya DBL, Priyanka Nair, Deepika Mishra, Sharada, Saloni Singh, and Alpana Dio.
Yeah, this was a very interesting category. And again, we got a very good range of podcasts, which personally, as somebody who's an avid podcast listener, I was very happy to see. And our juror in this category also mentioned that, there was such a range of interesting podcasts, from current affairs to poetry podcasts. There was like really a very, very wide range. So clearly this category is picking up, as we had Chavi speaking earlier as well. So yeah, on to the awardees.
So the winner of the Most Empowering Podcast team is Padma Priya DBL. Congratulations, Padma Priya.
Congrats, Padma Priya.
And in the individual category is Saloni Singh. Congratulations, Saloni.
Congrats, Saloni. Just a quick note, unlike other categories, in the podcast category, we don't have a winner and a runner-up. Instead, since there was a little bit of a variation in how the individual versus team podcasts look, we actually have two winners. So Padma Priya is the winner in the Most Empowering Podcast team category, and Saloni for the Most Empowering Podcast individual category. Congratulations to the both of you.
Move on to the next category is writing on LGBTQ plus issues. This is the last category of awards. And the finalists are Vandana Saxena, Shalini Malik, Sudipta Das,
Suchitra,
Sonal Singh, and Anusha Singh.
Congrats to all the finalists in this particular category. Again, it was very nice to see that we had a range of different kinds of stories on this, including fiction used to write about LGBTQ issues, as well as personal experiences. And it was also great to see more own voices emerging in this category from people who identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, as well as, of course, writing from people who identify as allies. So that was really something that was very nice to see, and something that we hope to see more of next year as well. And we'll go on to the awardees.
Yes. So the runners-up in this category is Sonal Singh. Congratulations, Sonal.
Congrats, Sonal.
And the winner is Shalini Malik. Congratulations, Shalini.
Yay, Shalini. Congratulations to you.
So with that, we come to the end of the awards category, and the Orange Flower 2021 festival. So we would like to thank all the attendees who joined us this evening. We really hope you had a good evening and inspirational evening. And thank you to all the speakers who joined us today, and the jurors who really had to a tough time selecting the awardees. And congratulations to the winners and the runners-up. Congratulations to all awardees, and congratulations to all finalists. And more power to you, more power to your voice, more power to your pen. And before we sign off, let me remind you to all the awardees to send us your mailing addresses to community@womensweb.in, so that we can send you the lovely trophy. And lastly, our ebook is live. So we have already shared it in the comment box on YouTube. So you can just check it out. It is live, and like Aparna said, it's a good weekend reading, or it's a good, just read it anytime. Why weekend? Why wait for the weekend? Read it today. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We hope you had a lovely evening today, and we'll see you next year. Hopefully, it won't be an online event. Hopefully we have that that human touch. We get to meet each other and talk to each other and hug each other. So have a lovely evening. And yes, please do share a pic with your trophy on social media, and do tag us. And yeah, with that, we would like to sign off. Hope you enjoyed this evening, and hope you enjoy of whatever is left of it. Bye-bye.